The opinions and views expressed in the following program are those of the speakers and the host, and do not necessarily reflect those of Yoakley Scott Corporation and your sports network.
Yeah, I've been closer to Jesus before, so can you help me out? Oh, can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Am I on my own? Am I on my own? Or can you help me out? Can you help me out? I've been scared to look in my soul. I've been afraid I would follow alone. Yeah, afraid of the things I've been told.
Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Running Point presented Monday through Friday from noon to 3 on ysnlive.com, presented by Greenwood Chevrolet on Mahoning Avenue in Austintown. Ron Pochasta with you alongside Anthony Hartwig. Coming up today, Brian Driscoll will be chiming in at 12:20. We'll get to the calm before the storm, and we're not talking winter storm, although we're going to have that today, and it's already starting to snow in HQ here in East Palestine.
Yeah, it's coming down.
Yeah, it's coming down pretty good. Not a
The weather
blizzard, but
outside is frightful.
yeah, and the sports talk is so delightful.
Exactly. Thanks for finishing.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Very welcome. So Brian Driscoll will provide the calm before the storm, a.k.a. the ACC title game between Notre Dame and Clemson.
They can cause some serious chaos.
Well,
you look at the rankings from yesterday. You know, Florida only dropped one spot, but I think that was just kind of I think Florida lost their chance, even if they beat Alabama.
I don't understand a couple of things, and that Florida loss was one.
But if Notre Dame and somehow Ohio State or Alabama, one of those two lose, if both those things happen, it's going to be mass chaos.
Yeah.
And then you really start to dive into, no one from outside the top six has ever jumped in the last weekend. So you got to imagine what six is Iowa State right now. What do you do?
Well,
You either leave one of those four in with two losses like Clemson, or you put Texas A&M and Iowa State in if two teams lose.
here's my problem with Iowa State at number 6. Okay, first of all, they have two losses.
Well,
Second of all,
a lot of top 10 teams have two losses if you look at it.
one of those two losses came to a team that only has one loss this year, but because they're a mid-major, they're ranked 19th. And this wasn't just a loss. Louisiana Lafayette beat the living hell out of Iowa State in the first game of the year, 31-14.
I think the committee is giving them a little bit of leeway because it was the first game of the year. This is my opinion. Like when I have to rationalize what they're doing, they're probably looking at it and go, it's the first game of the year. No one looks great the first game of the year.
Well,
Since then, they've looked
Louisiana
really good.
Lafayette looked pretty damn good the first game of the year.
Since then, Iowa State's looked pretty good. They haven't lost since.
Look, if you're going to put Iowa State at number 6, then for the love of God, you've got to put Louisiana Lafayette higher than 19.
Right.
They beat this team down by 17 points. I mean, this just that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The other thing, and we brought this up, Florida only losing one spot? What?
Right. And you heard the rationale. They think they're a better team than Cincinnati. And they didn't want to put them behind Georgia because
you
Georgia.
can't put them behind Georgia because you beat Georgia.
They were kind of put in a conundrum of they think they're better than Cincinnati. They said that on the show last night. They think they're a better team than Cincinnati. But they can't put them behind Georgia, so you got to kind of squeeze them into.
But they put Cincinnati ahead of Indiana.
Right.
And what does that say about the Big Ten? Exactly.
But they did jump Northwestern from 25 last week all the way to
Well, they didn't even have them in
14.
the top 25. They had them outside the top 25, and they were already up to number 14.
So I don't know if that was trying to set up some cushion for Ohio State if they beat them, or if that's also trying to set up if Northwestern pulls off an upset, they can scoot into at least the top 10.
We said be prepared for some weird stuff.
I would still be shocked if they went from 14 to top 4.
There's no way. There's no way you do that.
Even if two of the teams in there lose, that would, if Clemson and Ohio State both lose, or Clemson and Alabama or Ohio State and Alabama, any of those options, if all those teams lose, then I still don't see an avenue for Northwestern to jump into the playoffs.
Honestly, I don't think we are looking at 4 spots now. We're only looking at 2. Alabama and Notre Dame are in regardless of what happens. And I think now, because Florida got beat by LSU, we can say, okay, even if Notre Dame gets the absolute hell beat out of them by Clemson, they're going to be in at number 4 because, frankly, there's no other team that you should be able to put jumping Notre Dame.
If they win and Ohio State loses, then you got to fill 2 spots. That's where it gets
exactly. Look, if they upset Clemson, Clemson's out.
Right.
You can't put Clemson into this Final Four.
Your choices are, if Clemson's out, you got to put Texas A&M in, because there's no way. I would be really shocked if Iowa State took Clemson's spot. And that would be the next best conference champion.
And they're a conference champion provided they beat Oklahoma.
If they win the Big 12, I mean, you look at the tape and you just know Clemson's a better football team than Iowa State. Period. Like, it's not even a doubt. But because Clemson lost Notre Dame twice, they're gonna. I would rather see Texas A&M in there. At least they play the SEC night in and night out.
Yeah.
I would rather see Texas.
But they got embarrassed by Alabama.
I know they did, but a lot of people are getting embarrassed by Alabama.
I mean, if they would have played a decent game against Alabama, I'd be sitting back and going, okay, put A&M. A&M beat Florida.
They did. And
so that's why A&M is right now on the cusp of getting into the top 4. And if Ohio State stubs their toe, we might see 2 SEC teams and 2 ACC teams, depending on whether Clemson beats Notre Dame. And by the way, that's not a given. Even though the odds makers are having a field day putting the 10.5 on Notre Dame, it's not a given. We'll see.
I mean, Clemson's still the favorite, right? Are they given?
No, Clemson's the 10.5 point favorite against Notre Dame. I think it's a little too high.
Which is weird.
Yeah, it's
a little too high. I know they had the backup quarterback, but he put up Trevor Lawrence type numbers,
ginormous numbers.
The only difference is the Clemson defense is now healthy.
Yeah, we'll talk with Brian Driscoll about that in about 10 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes or so.
While we're waiting for that, let's wrap up some local hoops from last night.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of putting up numbers, Boardman put up numbers. Not a lot of offensive numbers, but they got their 3rd straight win. They trailed 34-33 after 3 quarters, but they wound up outscoring Lake 16-9 in the final stanza, and they beat Lake 49-43.
On the road, by the way.
Yeah, Uniontown Lake, they're not a bad team, even though they're 0-4 this year. It's a pretty good 0-4 team. J.J. Vaughn leading them with 22 points. Boardman had a gutty win, a very, very gutty win. Ethan Anderson, 13 points. Trey DiPietro with 12 points, 8 rebounds. Good win for Boardman last night. I saw a sloppy game last night in Camel. And by the way, can I say this right now? And I really hope Stacy Seepin, who is the athletic director at Camel, is able to accomplish this. If you've never been to the gymnasium at Camel Memorial High School, that gymnasium deserves a tournament bid from somewhere. D4, D3, boys, girls, I don't care. That gym floor and that gymnasium with the chairback seats screams for a tournament somewhere.
Yeah, I mean the best part about it, and this is just me, I took a lot of photos in high school for yearbook and stuff. The thing I loved about it is the lighting in there. The LED lighting is one of the best gyms to shoot in.
It's a beautiful gym.
And if you're hosting a tournament, you're gonna have a lot of media show up, so they're gonna want good lighting. So that's another benefit to Camel.
That's a beautiful gymnasium. Now, unfortunately, it was a sloppy game last night, but Crestview They got an overtime
I will
victory
say
over Camel.
that those seats are elevating a little bit, so handicap accessible. I give it a B minus.
Okay.
But
Well, it was also built
I get it.
pre-1970, I believe.
I get it. But if you're going to host a tournament, that's one of the things that you got to really think about.
You're going to have to have some handicapped access.
Struthers isn't exactly. You got to climb some stairs to get up in the Struthers seats too.
This is true. Now the good news with Camel is, like Struthers, there's a plenty of access from out of bounds to the wall. And then out of bounds to the stage. Mm-hmm. So you could park some wheelchairs into the corner and go from there and hope and pray nobody runs you over.
I've been close a couple of times taking pictures in the chair on the baseline.
There you go.
Even at Struthers, it just there's hard to stop the momentum.
Yeah.
So
I'll call you baseline warrior from here on out.
Take the truck.
Yeah, there you go. Take the offensive foul.
I would just hate to hurt someone if they tripped over the wheelchair in there.
Well, yeah, this is true. Yeah,
I would never forgive myself.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Good win for Crestview again. It wasn't a very clean victory, but they get it in overtime.
Great teams find ways to win when they're not playing their best, and you can talk about that Crestview game. It was sloppy. It was not a great basketball, but at the same time, the teams that find ways to win those games are the ones that really separate themselves as the season goes on, because you're not going to bring your A game every night.
No, this is true, and they're 3-3 now. These are the only two teams in the Mahoning Valley Athletic Conference gray tier that are playing basketball.
Right,
unfortunately, everyone else is shut down until after the first of the year.
They might play each other a couple more times.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens, and I'm sure Campbell would love an opportunity to get to Crestview again. I thought that Campbell played a pretty nice game. I mean, there's a couple opportunities, especially at the free throw line. You had opportunities to put the game away. You didn't do it. And, we've talked about when you lose by 2 or 3 points, you look at the free throws and you don't do too well. That can hurt.
That's back-to-back nights where Crestview team has been, in overtime. They've now split them. The boys won in overtime, and on Monday, the girls dropped one at United in overtime. So.
Yeah, that was Larry told me that game against United was pretty solid.
United is one of those teams. They're really young, but they're talented, young and talented. So they make young mistakes. That's why they've lost a couple games because of young mistakes. But when they stop playing like a young team, they can really put something special together. And Madison Kibler, the more I watch that girl, the more she's one of my favorite young players to watch. And went to the foul line as a sophomore with the game on the line in the overtime, knocked in both free throws, and she gets the spotlight on her for that. So
yeah, and Hughes had an opportunity to tie the game. They were down 1, and unfortunately for her, she missed both free throws. Right. And that's a painful lesson, but it's a lesson, hopefully, that you learn the importance of free throw shooting, especially in a tight game like that. Yeah,
and Crestview going forward, the girls are going to have to find a little bit more secondary scoring. It can't be the Krista Perry show, and it's kind of turned into that their last couple of games. I mean, she scored 25, and they had maybe one other player in double figures, and it was a low 10. So they just need someone to kind of step up and help her out a little bit, because eventually teams are going to lock down on Krista Perry, and that's going to be the game plan.
Well, that's one thing that the Springfield Tigers boys team doesn't have to worry about. They've got balanced scoring all over the place. We saw that on Saturday night against Crestview. Last night they go into Berlin Center and they put up 75 against a pretty good defensive team in Western Reserve. 75-50 victory for the Tigers, and they're rolling right now.
Yeah, and then like you said, their offense is so balanced. 4 players on the court that can really beat you night in, night out. Their win over the weekend over Crestview, they had, I think, 5 players in double figures. I don't know how many players they had in double figures last night exactly. I'm sure it's 3 or 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you had 5 of them.
Yeah, 5 players on the court that can all beat you. Then it's like, how do you defend that? You got to be really good all around to slow down Springfield's offense.
I made mention the only thing that could haunt them is their free throw shooting. And last night, 8 of 15. That's not good.
And their depth, I think, if some of their players get into foul trouble, their bench isn't very deep. So I think there's a big gap between maybe 6, 7, and 8 on that bench. So if some players start to get into foul trouble, they could find a little bit of trouble. But the 5 or 6 that they run out, and then they're top notch.
Struthers had no problems with South Range last night.
The Raiders still they're just struggling to score.
Yeah,
they're playing good defense. You hold Struthers to 55. That's a defensive win.
Yeah,
they're struggling to score. They can't.
Yeah, they're struggling in the foul line. They only went 4 of 11 last night. They're just struggling to shoot the ball. Period. And that'll come. But until it comes, that's going to be tough.
The good news is they're still playing good defense until it comes. So eventually, that defense is going to keep them in most of their games. So all they have to do is kind of flip that switch a little bit and find some offense. You don't have to find a lot of offense. You're not asking the kids to go out there and start scoring 70 a game. If South Range scores 55,
they should be
50
able
to
to
55, they should win most of their games.
The other team that it was tough to figure out, like South Range, Leetonia hasn't shot the ball very well. They hosted Lisbon last night, and look, Lisbon is Brownfield, McCullough, add a splash of Sifke, and you've got the makings of a trio that pretty much carries the basketball team. Right. And last night, the 3 of them combined for 51 of the 65 points. Now, the problem is Leetonia only scored 30 points. And again, they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a rowboat from the field. But on the free throw line, second time against United, this was the same thing. 10 of 13 from the free throw line, unbelievably good from the free throw line, but they couldn't hit anything on the field.
Correct me if I'm the next game they shot really well from the field, but then they missed
pedestrian from the free throw line.
So they got to sync up their things.
The potential is there. Now they're still banged up. Unfortunately, the numbers aren't really good at Leetonia either. I think there's 7 kids on the varsity team, 6 or 7 kids on the JV team. That's not a lot. Normally 14 kids would encompass one complete team. Now you're splitting 14 kids amongst 2 teams. Now you're talking about really hoping and praying nobody gets into foul trouble in either one of those games. Otherwise, you're SOL. But yeah, Lisbon's good. Look, Lisbon's good, and Lisbon's going to be good for about 4 more years.
When you have three scorers like that, you can't lock in on one of them, which is always good. And like you said, they're carrying the team, but it's 3 of them. It's not one person carrying the team. It's not even 2. It's there are 3 legitimate scorers. So it's hard to defend. You can't shut one person down.
You could if you did a diamond in 1 with 1 person. Okay, great. Triangle in 2, if it's 1 or 2 people, okay, great. What do you do with 3 people? You can't do anything exotic. It's not like you're going to put 2 guys in the lane and say, okay, we're going to put the other 3 locked down on a man-to-man and go from there.
And
no.
I would do like kind of a matchup zone type thing.
Yeah.
Because then you keep them from going inside, but you still, you're still locked into the couple players that hurt you. Because I feel Brownfield's a little bit better shooting from the perimeter than he is driving and finishing.
Yes.
So I would try my best to make him drive and take away his jump shot. And then I think McCullough's the exact opposite. I think he's really good at driving to the hoop and finishing down low. So I would make him be a jump shooter. So you just have to have different philosophies for guarding the 2 different players.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who can stop Lisbon. They're 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the EOAC. Leetonia loses their second game in the EOAC. They play Valley Christian in Youngstown on Friday night. That should be interesting.
Yeah, and I'm excited for Valley Christian versus Lisbon down the road.
Yeah, I'm excited for Lisbon and Southern on Friday night.
Okay,
that should be a fun game too. We're going to take a time out. On the other end, we will hear from Brian Driscoll, our guy from South Bend. It's National Signing Day, Part 2.
It's
the sequel.
early signing day, right?
Yeah, it's Isn't
Right,
it late?
so-
Yeah, it's early signing day, and then we get the late signing day later on, hence late signing day.
And then, football's a little bit different because, like, the other sports, you basically get all your people signed almost on one day.
Yeah.
Football's spread out through the week. You have some people signing today, some people will sign tomorrow, a couple people signed yesterday. It's crazy to kind of try to follow.
It's crazy. And, by the way, they're playing in the ACC title game against Clemson with
That
an
helps.
opportunity to maybe get a number 1 seed if they beat Clemson. We'll talk about that. Also, the exit of one Clark Lee, who has accepted the football job at Vanderbilt, he will stick around for the postseason, but who does Notre Dame hire? We will talk with him.
I can strongly recommend one of their candidates.
Yeah, okay. Well, you want to strongly recommend him because you want him the hell out of Atlanta.
Right.
We'll take a time. I'll be back with more. It's a Wednesday edition of Running Point. Stick around.
21 News.
Let's get right to our top story tonight.
More experienced reporters
A new Wilmington restaurant.
GM Lordstown.
telling more local stories
We'll look at
Baby
efforts
boy
to
is
curb
recovering from a broken.
around our
Good
valley
afternoon. We are here in Youngstown, right up.
because you expect
It's important for everyone.
No place like home.
more local news.
In Mercer County
Before
Court.
they become life threatening.
21 News is our valley's #1 local news.
Welcome home to a home made homier with Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods. Inspiration starts at BairdBrothers.com and is turned into reality when high-quality hardwoods are delivered right to your home. Baird Brothers has the latest design trends, shiplap and skinny lap interior siding, antique oak rustic flooring, and, well, you'll find them all at BairdBrothers.com. Ordered easily, delivered conveniently, enjoyed comfortably. BairdBrothers.com.
Attention football fans, order Coca's Pizza tailgate package for only $54.99. You'll receive 24 slices of our delicious cheese pizza, 20 jumbo wings, and 2 of our famous foot-long pepperoni rolls. Coca's Pizza, we serve it hot.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions.
WRS Insurance Solutions is a local independent agency that specializes in life, Medicare, long-term care, and disability products. Call us at 330-953-3722 or visit us at wrsinsuranceSolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
Your Armstrong services are more important than ever. There are more and more connected devices in the home these days. To get the most out of your experience, you need a network that is always getting better. You deserve superior performance, and that's what Armstrong offers every day. Whether you're working from home, enjoying your favorite content together, or simply catching up while apart, count on Armstrong to keep you connected to what matters most.
I went to Greenwood Chevrolet because I was really interested in looking at the tracks.
Because I wanted my dream truck.
Because I've been going there for 20 years. I think whenever we go there, whatever car we're looking for, they have tremendous inventory.
If you're looking for people who care about you, Greenwood is the place to go.
You know, it's like family there. The girls know me in service. It's Miss Kim in the Tahoe.
I'm really happy that I went
To Greenwood Chevrolet.
Because they really went
The extra mile for me.
Now we're going the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
For heating, cooling, and indoor air quality, the Mahoning Valley trusts MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning, offering worry-free repair, service, and installation. Call MP Vivo today for a free estimate.
MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. We're your energy-efficient experts.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Ron Potesta with you alongside Anthony Hardwig. We go to the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline to South Bend, Indiana, where we find our Notre Dame guru, Brian Driscoll from IrishBreakdown.com. Brian, how are you today, sir?
Busy, but good. Busy, but good.
It is National Signing Day. Is it part 2 or is this the part 1?
This is part 1.
Okay. All right. So because I know some people were signing earlier or saying that they were doing some stuff earlier, and I always lose track of this because I know that we have a date in today, and then we have another date in February, and all kinds of dates. Hopefully a lot of 4- and 5-star athletes are putting pen to paper and saying yes to Notre Dame.
Well, not a lot of 5-stars. Although I would say that Tyler Buckner at quarterback and Blake Fisher at the offensive line are that caliber player. Blake Fisher is a 5-star on Rivals, but it's a typical Notre Dame class. You know, guys that are high on upside, but you know, guys that are going to need some time to develop at some various positions. But you know, it's a very strong offensive class. It's a good defensive class that has a lot of potential. But it's going to be what you usually expect from Notre Dame. It's kind of that 8 to 12, 8 to 13 ranked class that, you know, that brings good balance and you know, brings good line play.
Okay, I'm seeing that we've picked up a couple of good defensive linemen. What can you tell me about Will Schweitzer, the defensive end that signed on the dotted line with Notre Dame today?
Well, they flipped him from Nebraska several months ago, and, you know, I really like this guy, Ron, because, you know, he plays all over the field in high school, plays some offense, he plays off the edge, but he also plays inside linebacker, and he's a really instinctive kid, really smart, excellent range, and he's what you want at that Viper position. I mean, if you think about it, Dalen Hayes was a linebacker in high school, a running back and a linebacker, and to play that position, you need a guy that has experience dropping into coverage, a guy that has experience playing in space, and those kind of things. And Will Schweitzer brings that. Now he's about 6'4", 220, 225 pounds, so he's going to need time to fill out that frame. But I love his first step. He has that natural ability to kind of bend and get under offensive tackles as a pass rusher, and he's very athletic. And so, you know, he's what you, again, when I talk about the typical Notre Dame player, it's when I'm talking about defensive line, it's meant in a complimentary way. They haven't signed a bunch of 5-star defensive linemen. They take these long, raw, athletic players like Julian Okwara, like Dalen Hayes, like Isaiah Foskey, like Ovia Gofu, like Adi Ogundiji, like Khalid Kareem, and they turn them into standouts. And that's really what this kid brings to the table, and I really love his game. And you could say about the other California, and they got Devin Upow. I mean, everything I just said about Will Schweitzer, I would say about him. Long, athletic, going to need time to fill out, but a lot of upside.
Brian Driscoll, our guest on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. Now, unfortunately, the two kids that you just mentioned will not be playing defense for Notre Dame under the current defensive coordinator, as our current defensive coordinator is now going to be the head football coach at Vanderbilt, and that will be as of 2021. Now, the good news, Clark Lee will be hanging around and hopefully celebrating a national championship. We mentioned this a few weeks ago. Notre Dame, this is their own fault. Notre Dame should have backed the Brinks truck up and said, hey, we'll give you anything that you want as long as you can stay at Notre Dame. But, you know, here's the thing. I mean, I don't know if a ridiculous amount of money would have stopped him from going back to his hometown. He's a Nashville, Tennessee guy, and he has family there, and Vanderbilt's in Nashville. So I honestly don't know if money would have been a factor, Brian.
Well, I think we can say that we'll never know, because Notre Dame didn't do what they should have done, which is make him a big offer before he hit the open market, and they didn't do that. I didn't expect them to do that, because that's not how Brian Kelly operates, unfortunately. But you are correct. I don't know if that necessarily would have mattered. Some coaches are moved by more than just money. Clark Lee is one of those guys. You know, I think that if Clark Lee really cared about money, he might have followed Mike Elko to Texas A&M, you know, because they were offering him a big chunk of change. But he wants to run his own program, doing it back home by where his family is. You know, his young kids, his wife can be around family, and he gets to rebuild a program in his image. And I think that's attractive to a lot of coaches.
Okay, so who do we replace Clark Lee with in 2021? I was reading in The Athletic, and in alphabetical order, they had some interesting names. And I know that when I mentioned the Georgia Tech defensive coordinator who is on this list, my partner's eyes lit up and said, "Oh, we'll be glad to pack his bags for you."
Yeah, sometimes I feel like people in the media just throw names out of people that they know or people that they like or people that they'd like to see get jobs, because some of the names I've seen thrown out, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why would you hire that guy? You know, and you look at Georgia Tech, oh, sure, let's go hire a guy that gave up 73 points to Clemson. Makes total sense. It just some of these names I look at and I kind of chuckle. There are some real guys out there. I don't think that Brian Kelly has dove into the pool of players yet, because right now Notre Dame is focused on beating Clemson and playing Clemson in the ACC title game. And once that all settles down, then Brian Kelly will focus on hiring the defensive coordinator. So anybody that tells you that they know what Brian Kelly is going to do is probably not being honest with you, or they're just guessing, because I've heard from inside the sources in the Goog, I've heard all types of different options. I think that Mike Elston will be a candidate. I think Terry Joseph will be a candidate. Alex Grinch, the former Ohio State coach, is a name that gets thrown around. Marcus Freeman at Cincinnati, John Heacock at Iowa State. But again, these are more just people trying to find connections to Brian Kelly or find people with good reputations and resumes, as opposed to necessarily guys that are at the top of the list, because Notre Dame's not interviewing anybody this week, and all those coaches are getting ready to play games this week. So it's very, very, very premature to really start thinking about who is going to be that next person.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the ACC title game, and it's coming up on Saturday. How surprised are you? And we'll throw the number out, because the guys in Vegas love to do this stuff. It started as a 7-point spread. It has quickly moved to 10.5. How surprised are you that a lot of folks are putting a significant amount of money on Clemson in this particular instance?
I'm not surprised at all. Look, winning rematches is hard, right? And the notion is that I think a lot of people buy is that Notre Dame needed double overtime to beat Clemson the first time at home, without Trevor Lawrence, without Tyler Davis, without Mike Jones Jr., and without James Skalski. I don't think that there's reason for people to feel like if you're putting money on the line and you're a gambler, it would make a lot of sense to put your money on Clemson. And so the line is going to grow because they're trying to get more people to start putting some money on Notre Dame. That's what those things are about. I think people, I think a lot of times get into this notion that those are predictors. And no, that is a way for them to try to balance out so they can make as much money as possible, no matter who wins the game. But I would have set the line in Clemson's favor, for a host of reasons. Notre Dame got a great win over Clemson, but to say, yeah, they're going to do it twice would be, I think would be something. Say, can they do it twice? Absolutely. Would I put money on it? Well, that's why I don't bet. That's why I don't gamble, because you just never know in these things. But ESPN had a thing last night where I think there's been 3 rematches of top 5 teams in history, and the team that won the first game has lost the rematch every single time.
All right, Brian, so let me ask you, and somebody asked me this, and I thought about it for a second and said, you can make a serious argument for this. Let's say that Notre Dame defeats Clemson in the rematch. Does this give Notre Dame enough ammunition to jump Alabama and be the top seed?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No. Look, here's the deal. Notre Dame would have 2 great wins, right? But here's the thing that people need to understand. Alabama is absolutely murdering people, right? Like Notre Dame's beating good teams. Alabama is destroying people, right? They just beat Arkansas 52-3. Arkansas is a good football team. They beat LSU 55-17. Auburn 42-13. Kentucky has a really good defense. Alabama hung 63 on them. They beat Mississippi State 41-0. Tennessee 48-17. Top 10 Georgia 41-24. Number 5 Texas A&M 52-24. Missouri by 19. Their closest game this year, I'm trying to do the math, was a 41-24 victory over Georgia, who's the number 8 team in the country. They are destroying people. The only way Notre Dame jumps up to number 1 is if Alabama loses, plain and simple. And that's how it should be, because Alabama is heads and shoulders above everyone else in the country based on how they're playing on Saturdays. They're absolutely annihilating people, and they've been doing it all year.
Is it pretty much a certainty now that Florida lost to LSU that win or lose, we have 2 teams already in the playoffs, Alabama and Notre Dame?
Absolutely. I don't see any scenario in which you could justify Notre Dame not being in. Let's say Clemson beats them by 52-24, right? Well, that's the same exact score that Alabama beat Texas A&M, and if Texas A&M beats Tennessee this weekend, they'll finish with 8 wins compared to 10 for Notre Dame. So, there's really no justification. There's no resume for any team. I think Ohio State, if they win, they're in. We can just argue whether or not they should or shouldn't, but if they win, they're in. But I think there's only 2 teams right now that really are in no matter what happens this weekend.
And yeah, I think Florida kind of sealed Notre Dame's fate in that playoff, because that was the only team you could look at and say, if they beat Alabama, of course, before they lost to LSU, that they would have a chance to even jump Notre Dame. So yeah, I think you're right. I think Florida's loss absolutely kind of sealed Notre Dame into that top 4. But what I want to ask you about the ACC championship and some of the key matchups between Notre Dame's offense and Clemson's defense, because I think that's what we're looking at, because Clemson's defense, they were missing 3 people, and everyone's kind of thinking that's going to be the difference. So what are some key matchups between the Irish's offense and the Tigers' defense?
Look, there's interesting personnel matchups. How does Zeke Correll and the interior players handle matching up against Tyler Davis? Can Javon McKinley have another big day on the outside? The safeties are run players. How are they going to defend the Notre Dame tight ends? And I think those are all intriguing matchups. But honestly, guys, to me, the matchup that's going to have the biggest impact in this game is Tommy Rees against Brent Venables. Brent Venables has now seen this Notre Dame team. He knows what they can do. He is going to want to get back at them. He is not someone who's going to like giving up 47 points to anybody. He is going to have something for them now that he's got all his weapons back. And, Tommy Rees is going to have to counterpunch, and he's going to have to anticipate what's going to get thrown at him and make the calls that are going to give his players an opportunity to thrive, because Brent Venables is going to bring his A game for Clemson as the defensive coordinator. Tommy Rees is going to have to match him if Notre Dame's going to win this game, because, look, here's the funny thing, guys. Notre Dame gave up more points in regulation to Clemson in November than they gave up to Clemson in the playoff game 2 years ago, right? So the offense is going to have to bring their A game. The defense is not going to hold Clemson to 21, 24 points, right? The offense is going to have to score if they're going to win this football game. I don't care how well the Notre Dame defense plays in this game.
How important is establishing the run in this game for Notre Dame offensively? Because, again, I think Ian Book's having a tremendous year, but they're going to have a whole lot of help from the running attack, and in my mind, establish the running attack so the play action works to perfection, hopefully.
Well, I would argue that Ian Book is having a great month. I don't think Ian Book has had a great year. I think Ian Book was a pretty pedestrian quarterback for the first 6 games of the year. He's been outstanding the last 4, and they need him to do that, and not just from a throwing standpoint, but also from a running standpoint, because that's going to help take some of the pressure off the run game. And look, I don't expect Notre Dame to go for over 200 yards again against Clemson, and they don't need to do that. But if they can get to around, about 150, 160, average 4.5 yards a pop, and essentially what you want to do is you want to keep Clemson focused on the box. Clemson is going to come out early and try to shut down your run game. If you can get 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, the occasional 10, 12-yard run, and keep them focus on the box, that's where you're going to set up some of your big play opportunities down the field with the pass game. And that's also how you can set up some opportunities for Ian Book to get in space and make some plays with his legs, on passing down. So if Clemson's able to shut Notre Dame down with their box, 6, 7 guys in the box, and keep their safeties back, that's going to be trouble for Notre Dame. And if Notre Dame's not getting movement in the run game because of how the front 7 is playing for Clemson, the offense is going to have a hard time winning, because they just don't have the dynamic playmakers to consistently beat Clemson on the outside without balance.
Brian, it sounds to me like the offensive line is going to have to have another quality game for Notre Dame to have a chance to win this one.
No question. They have to be able to make room to run. They have to give the quarterback time to throw. They have to be smart to handle all the pressures and stunts and blitzes that Brent Venables is going to throw at them. They've been, in my opinion, the nation's best offensive line this year. It's Notre Dame and Alabama have the 2 best offensive lines this year. Notre Dame needs to play like the best offensive line in this game to give the offense the opportunity it's going to need to put up points, and Ian Book is going to have to play in this game like he has played the last month, which is playmaker. You got to be a playmaker. You can't turn the ball over. You got to be a playmaker. You got to be willing to attack. You got to be aggressive, and when the opportunities are there, the receivers got to make the plays. But it all is going to focus down on, Ron, it's going to have to be the line's going to have to set the tone and the tempo for this game.
And then you look on the other side on defense. We said it, Notre Dame's defense isn't going to hold Clemson down, but they still have to do a little bit better job than the first matchup. What kind of things can Notre Dame execute better to at least slow down the Clemson offense, maybe get a big stop when their offense is struggling or whatever it may be? There's going to be a point when they need a big stop. What kind of things can they do?
Well, they got to tackle better. I mean, I actually think outside of tackling, I thought the defense played pretty well. I mean, they held Clemson to 1 yard per carry. Yeah, that's pretty good. Clemson's going to get their yards. And again, when you say, well, you look at it and you say they gave up 40 points. Well, they only gave up 33 points in regulation, which is 2 touchdowns below their season average. When you can hold a team to 2 touchdowns below their season average, you did pretty good. So I think context kind of matters a little bit in this area too. And I think that tackling better is going to lead to limiting some of the big plays because, look, they're going to complete a couple balls downfield like they did last time. They're just going to, especially with Trevor Lawrence back. But what you can't do is you can't allow them to get those after the yards big plays. And an example would be on one of their early scoring drives. It was a 2nd and 10. They threw a little 3-yard slide route to Amari Rodgers. Jeremiah Wusu has him dead to rights. And if you tackle him, it's 3rd and 7. And the way that Clemson, handled third downs in that game, you're probably getting off the field with a chance to really put some distance between the two of you. He misses the tackle, and Amari Rodgers ends up going for about 28, 30 yards, and that eventually sets up a score. You can't allow those kind of plays. You have to make Clemson earn all the points that they get. If it's 30 points, if it's 33 points, if it's 27 points, whatever the case may be, you have to make them earn it. You can't give them those cheap yards because that's how they really become hard to stop, is when you give them those second chance opportunities and you miss out on those opportunities to get off the field. You just can't have that in a game like this.
Etienne did not have a good game against Notre Dame. As a matter of fact, Notre Dame did a great job of stopping the Clemson running back. I got to imagine that he's ready to redeem himself in a big way on Saturday.
I don't know. Brian can speak into this and whether he agrees or not, but I think maybe there was a little bit more focus on stopping the run game in that game because they were a backup quarterback. So you think going into that game plan might be, hey, force their backup quarterback to win the game. Now backup quarterback put up really good numbers, but at the same time, not having Trevor Lawrence kind of lets the defense focus a lot more on stopping the run.
Oh, 100%. I think you nailed it. I think the key was if they're going to beat us, they're going to have to beat us with a freshman quarterback. And at the end of the day, he couldn't do it. He put up big numbers. But, numbers don't always tell the story of efficiency. And you look at the fact that they were sub 30% on third down. You look at the fact that, he takes that first sack in second overtime, which I don't think Trevor Lawrence takes that first sack in overtime. Those are the kind of things where you're going to have to make a freshman quarterback beat you time and again. Well, he made some big plays almost half his yards came on about 5 or 6 completions. That's the other thing. And so, but I don't think the game plan changes a whole lot in this game. Look, this is what they did to Clemson in 2018 too. Their focus in the first half was pressure the line. Don't let them get the run game going. Put pressure on the quarterback, and until up to the point where Julian Love got hurt with about 2 minutes left in the first half, Clemson had 9 points, and 3 of those points came on a short field after an Ian Book fumble. So. The game plan isn't going to change a whole lot. You have to dominate at the line of scrimmage, and that's going to manifest itself in shutting down the run game and then pressuring the quarterback. Because the only chance you have to beat this team is to put Trevor Lawrence on a lot of third and longs. The only way you can put him in third and longs is to shut down their run game. And the more one-dimensional you make them, the better your ability to then pressure the quarterback in those passing situations. So stopping Travis Etienne is still going to be priority number 1 for Notre Dame.
The defensive line, and going into the Clemson game, is a lot more healthy than the offensive line. Would that be a correct assessment, Brian?
Yes, but you're going to get now Yola back and some other guys back. So, yeah, it's definitely rounding into good health.
Well, look, at the end of the day, we can do all the X's and O's and all the schematics and whatnot. The game of football has been, always is, and always will be one up front, and that's one of the reasons why I like Notre Dame is the fact that their offensive line is one of the 2 best in the country, and their defensive line is very, very good at stopping the run, and I think Notre Dame is going to need both lines to play extraordinarily well as they have most of the year, for this team to have any hope of beating Clemson.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw that in November, right? We saw Notre Dame dominated in the trenches. And even though Clemson got their fair share of big plays at the skill positions, the game was ultimately won in the trenches, right? In 2018, the Notre Dame defensive line, I think, won the battle against the Clemson offensive line. But on the other side, the Notre Dame offensive line got dominated. And that was a big part of why Notre Dame lost that game. And so, yes, the battle in the trenches is going to be important. But, guys, I think the other part of this is the game of football is about trench warfare, but it's also about quarterback play. And Ian Book is going to have to go toe-to-toe with Trevor Lawrence. He's going to have to go throw for throw and play for play and drive for drive, and he's going to have to play like he has the last month. Notre Dame cannot afford to do in this game what they did in the last game, which is score on the first possession of the game and then not get another touchdown until the last 2 minutes, offensive touchdown. You know, they can't rely on Travis Etienne just getting the ball ripped out of his hands by Jeremiah Wusu and getting a return for a touchdown. You know, you can't assume you're going to get those plays again this time. The offense is going to have to play a lot better. They're going to have to turn some of those drives into touchdowns. They're going to have to sustain more drives. And at the end of the day, the line has to do their part. But if the line does their part and Ian Book doesn't do his part, it's not going to matter. They're going to both have to step up and have big days. And this is an opportunity for Ian Book to put a big exclamation mark on his legacy.
And I think that the intangible in all of this, and I honestly believe this is true, if Notre Dame beats Clemson, Clemson doesn't make the playoffs.
I don't think they will. I think they should, but I don't think they will. But again, I have to ask this question, Ron. Who do you put in over them? You're going to put an 8-1 Texas A&M who didn't play for the conference title over a 9-2 Clemson, whose only losses would be to the number 2 team in the country. You know what I mean? Like, what's the big win that Texas A&M would be hanging their hat on would be over Florida, where if Florida loses to Alabama, they're no longer in the top 10. So I don't think Clemson will be in the playoffs if they lose to Notre Dame in a close game, but I think they should. Now, if Notre Dame spanks Clemson, then they're out. They should be out.
Well,
but if it's another close game, then yeah, I think they're still one of the 4 best teams.
Now, let me ask you. I mean, Iowa State, assuming they beat Oklahoma, they win the Big 12 championship, and we keep hearing that the committee loves conference championships. Well, the Big 12 isn't all that great, but Iowa State wins a Big 12 championship. 2 losses, but Iowa State wins a Big 12 championship. Could you honestly see and Iowa State leapfrogging Texas A&M if Notre Dame beats Clemson and going into the Final Four?
No, because I don't think the committee loves conference championships as much as ESPN says the committee loves conference championships. I think that's more of an ESPN creation, and the examples and the exhibits that I give are Alabama in 2018, right? They didn't win their conference, or excuse me, was that 2017? 2017, Alabama didn't win their division. They didn't play for a conference championship, still got in the playoffs, and beat Georgia, who won the conference championship that year. 2016, Ohio State not only didn't win their conference championship, they got beat by the team that won the conference championship, and they still went to the playoffs.
Yep.
You know, so I don't think the committee cares as much about that as ESPN talking heads do. The committee cares about who are the 4 best teams, and you cannot convince me, as great as they've played against a bad conference, a team that lost by double figures to Louisiana does not deserve to be in the college football playoff. And I love Matt Campbell, but I'm sorry, you lost by double digits to Louisiana. Whereas Clemson's 2 losses would be to the number 2 team in the country. You can't convince me that's a better record.
Yeah, listen, you brought up something that frankly confused me a little bit. Here's Iowa State at number 6, and Anthony and I talked a little bit about this before we put you on. Iowa State got their ass kicked by Louisiana Lafayette, 31-14, and here's Louisiana Lafayette at number 19. They've only lost 1 game this year. That's it. That's all they've lost. 1 game this year, and it was a 3-point loss to the Chanticleers of Coastal Carolina, who, by the way, they get to play again this week in the conference championship game. How in the world is Louisiana Lafayette way the hell down at number 19, where Iowa State, who got their ass kicked by Louisiana Lafayette, is at number 6? I don't understand that.
Well, it's the same argument of why is Cincinnati, undefeated Cincinnati, behind 2-loss Iowa State and 2-loss Georgia? Or 2-loss Florida. I mean, and 2-loss Georgia. It's asinine, really, if we're being serious about it. And I think that Cincinnati has an even bigger beef because Cincinnati's not only winning games, they're crushing teams. I think the only competitive game they've had all year was a road game at Central Florida, right? And so I think there's several teams that have a beef. But the one thing the committee will say, and there's some validity to it, is, again, I think we as outsiders, as fans, as analysts, some of us get too wrapped up into what ESPN says that the committee values. And the committee has shown time and time again they don't put as much value on head-to-head as ESPN does. They don't put as much value on conference championships as head-to-head does. And as I pointed out, Ohio State in 2016 is the perfect example because they lost head-to-head to the team that won the Big Ten championship. But why did they not get in? Ohio State had a better overall resume. 11-1 Ohio State against a 2-loss Penn State team that got smacked by Michigan that year. So when you look at Iowa State's overall resume, they will make the case, I'm not saying I buy it, but they will make the case that, yes, they won that head-to-head, but Iowa State beat Oklahoma, they beat Texas, they had a much more competitive schedule. I don't necessarily buy that. I definitely don't buy it for Cincinnati because I think the AAC is a lot closer to the Big 12 than the Big 12 is to the SEC. Mm-hmm. So I don't necessarily buy it. I think that this is the time of year they start moving teams around to try to create the matchups they like. But as much as I like what Iowa State is doing, they are not the 6th best team in the country, and they are not a team that deserves really any conversation whatsoever about being in the college football playoff. Guys, I think the 4 best teams in the country are already in the top 4. And barring Notre Dame just obliterating Clemson or Ohio State getting upset by Northwestern, which to me would be the biggest shocker of the last decade, I think the 4 teams are already set. It's just about what's the seeding going to be.
Now, on the record, if Clemson does get, if they have to go, who do you replace them with? Because for your opinion, because the committee's never taken someone outside the top 6 and put them into the top 4 after the last weekend. So it's got to be A&M or Iowa State. So if Clemson has to go, if they get beat up or whatever it may be, who would you replace them with?
So so you're saying if Clemson gets smacked by Notre Dame,
right.
We're going with the theory that Notre Dame just controls that game and beats them by 14 points.
Right.
Hang on a second. Or if Northwestern shocks the world and does a Buster Douglas and knocks out Ohio State.
That 4th team. For me, I'm going. If Iowa State beats Oklahoma, I'm going with Iowa State because I think again I'm about total resume. And when I look at Texas A&M, I see a blowout loss to Alabama. I see a 3-point win over Florida, and then I see a bunch of nothing. When I look at Iowa State, you'd have 2 wins over Oklahoma. You'd have a win over Texas, who's in the top 25, and you'd have a conference championship. You'd have a 9-2 team compared to an 8-1 team. So I just think overall resume, I think that Iowa State is better than Texas A&M. I think Iowa State has been more convincing in some of their wins. I think Iowa State has more, to me, impressive road wins than Texas A&M does. So I would probably go with Iowa State, but I could see a scenario in which if Texas A&M just absolutely smashes Tennessee this weekend, you could say, hey, look, they're a hot team. They haven't lost since the 2nd game of the year. So I think there would be an argument for Texas A&M, but for me, I would put Iowa State in the playoff at that point in time because I think they've got a better, stronger overall resume.
All right, Brian, before we let you go, prediction time. What do you think of Saturday's ACC title game, which will start at 4 p.m. Saturday afternoon?
Guys, I hate to do this to you, but I don't really have a prediction yet. I have been back and forth every single day. One day I'm like, it's going to be Clemson 34-17. The next day it's Notre Dame 33-30. I'm just back and forth so much right now. I really don't have it locked in. I think it's going to be hard for Notre Dame to win a second time. I really do. I think when you look at 2 great teams, two relatively evenly matched teams, it's hard to beat that team again. So that's kind of why I'm back and forth on it. But then I look at the matchups and the line play and those kind of things, and I say to myself, boy, I really like how Notre Dame matches up with Clemson. So if I had to pick, I'm going to go with Clemson. I think it'll be a close game. But as far as score goes, I haven't been able to lock in on anything because I haven't been able to fully wrap my head around who's actually going to win this game.
Yeah.
I know it's a chicken way out, but that's why it's still Wednesday. I'm in coaching mode. We're still full pad day, right? We're not even to walkthroughs yet, so I can't possibly feel good about a prediction when we're still this far out from such a big game.
We'll let you off the hook this week.
Thanks, guys.
I think the defenses are going to make a few adjustments. I mean, there's still going to be a lot of offense, but I don't think it's going to be nearly what we saw in the first matchup. I'm going to say maybe 35-28 Clemson wins by a touchdown.
You and I are on the same wavelength, but I
basically see the same amount of offense we saw in the regulation of the last game, is what you're saying.
I'm going 31-24. I think Clemson gets the victory, late touchdown to break a 24 all tie. I'm going to go 31-24, and Notre Dame will ultimately slide down to number 4 and have to play Alabama in the semifinals.
But you know what? I'm rooting for chaos. So hopefully Notre Dame wins, and hopefully Ohio State gets upset, and we can have some real fun and get some fresh blood in the college football playoffs.
Really make for an interesting 24 hours. That would make for a very interesting 24 hours.
Listen, it's 2020. I'm expecting some weird stuff to happen. It's 2020, for God's sake.
I never expected Florida to go and lose to LSU, who's having one of the worst seasons in the SEC.
Oh, yeah.
What the heck happened? I mean,
well, they took a page out of their brethren at Tallahassee, Free Shoe University. Here's your shoe.
They got off on the wrong foot.
Oh wow, nice.
Hey, guys, the way 2020 has gone, Alabama's going to lose, Notre Dame's going to lose, Clemson's going to get the 1 seed, Northwestern's going to upset Ohio State, Oklahoma's going to beat Iowa State, Texas A&M's going to lose to Tennessee, and you're going to end up with Clemson versus Cincinnati in round 1. And Notre Dame and Alabama as the 2-3 seed. That's what, based on how 2020 has gone. That's what's going to happen this week.
Holy smokes! I'd pay to see that. I think that would be outstanding. Brian, always a pleasure. We'll talk next week, and we'll definitely know who we're playing next week.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right, see you, Brian Driscoll from IrishBreakdown.com. I'm going to take a timeout. On the other side, Dre Smith will be calling in. YSU Women's Hoops.
I wonder how aggressive Notre Dame's going to be to win this game. Now they're locked into the playoffs. So are they going to? I mean, obviously you want to win. You want to win the ACC.
If you have an opportunity to knock out arguably the best team in college football,
right,
do it.
But it's one of those things where how many risks do you take?
Well, you're already in the playoffs. Go ahead and do it.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm going to play all out and just I'm going to throw everything but the kitchen sink and say, I want you out of the playoffs. I don't want any part of Clemson in this postseason, and we have an opportunity to do this. Now, for Ohio State, look, Clemson's coach has been making some pretty disparaging remarks saying Ohio State doesn't belong in this tournament because they haven't played a lot of games.
I've never liked Dabo Swinney that much with the way he talks.
I mean, he's
the way he talks and the way why would he thrives on people putting chips on Clemson's back, and he's really a good motivator.
Yeah.
So being in that mindset, why would you go and poke the Ohio State Bears?
Yeah, that was just a jackass thing to say. There's no two ways about that. That was just an asinine thing to say by Dabo Swinney. And Ohio State's chomping at the bit to get them. Let me tell you, Notre Dame hopefully knocks Clemson completely out of the playoffs.
We gotta let the nerds play first, though.
Well, that's
they're sitting there like, guys.
Yeah, they're hold on a second.
We're here. We're number 14.
Well, I'd love to see Northwestern upset Ohio State just because a nerd alert thing. But
they're gonna play the Joker and be like, I'm an agent of chaos.
I think they are a much better team than what people think.
I do too. I think
defensively they'll slow Ohio State down. They just can't score.
Bad game against State. That was everyone gets a bad game.
All right, we'll take a timeout. Dre Smith on the other end. Stick around.
It storms season.
I think we're under the gun for some heavy storms over the next couple of hours.
And Storm Tracker 21 is ready.
This is probably the one we're keeping a closer eye on.
On air.
And locally, we're going to have a lot of eyes on our area.
Online.
All right, let's talk high-risk futurecast and the timing of this weather.
On social media and on our app.
Rain will come and go tomorrow. There'll be some dry intervals.
Stay ready with Storm Tracker 21.
The severe weather threat now through around sunset this evening.
Hi, I'm Colin Chupa. And I'm Kelsey Clem from K-Squared Marketing. Our boutique marketing firm specializes in media planning and buying, public relations, event marketing strategies, and strategic sponsorships. We can integrate our services with your existing game plan, or we can be your entire marketing team. Your goals, our game plan. Let's win together. Call K-Squared Marketing at 330-623-2730 or visit ksquared.marketing to learn more.
Hi everyone, this is DJ Yoakley with Your Sports Network. We appreciate your support of YSN and welcome you to the YSN family. Our broadcast streams are brought to you live at no cost to you by sponsors that are local to this community. Without the vision and generosity of our sponsors and partners, we would not be able to bring this game to you today. So please support the great businesses and leaders that are making this game possible. And if you're a business in need of great advertising and sponsorship opportunities, feel free to head over to our site for more information on the right fit for you. We are local, we are loyal, and we are live. We are YSN.
Ah, the details. Baird Brothers Fine Hardwoods is one fine ride. Perfect cornering, superb handling, sporty and stylish, power to spare, plus awesome mileage. Yeah, jaw-droppingly beautiful lines and well appointed with luxurious trim. Put more oomph in your life and start beholding the molding. Find your home's fine hardwood at BairdBrothers.com.
No matter what the weather, be prepared with a reliable, efficient Rude gas furnace or air conditioner from MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. Call your energy-efficient expert, MP Vivo, today for a free estimate.
Here at MP Vivo, we rely on Rude, and so should you.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on YSNLive.com. Ron Potesta with you alongside Anthony Hartwig. 330-886-0813, the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline open for business. Well, one team that's not open for business right now due to COVID is the YSU women's basketball program. They missed their first weekend of action in the Horizon League, and sadly, they're going to miss this weekend's of action as well. And joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning hotline, one of the voices for the YSU women's basketball program, Dre Smith, joining us. Dre, how goes it today, sir?
Doing good, Ron. It's getting a little bit of snow here in Youngstown, Ohio. As I look out my office over Stambaugh Stadium, there is a lot of snow falling, so definitely winter weather coming our way, but everything's good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, and the snow in the HQ in East Palestine is coming down pretty good as well. And yeah, I just wish that I wish we had some basketball in terms of action to talk about, and it's coming soon. Unfortunately, the YSU women, they've run into and then the last month or so, just some really bad luck health-wise.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a couple of pausing of team activities. It's been unfortunate for the team and the staff. I know they've worked really, really hard throughout this pandemic to get back on the floor. And, you know, I think everything had been going well. They were practicing and preparing to open the season with some non-conference games in early December. Unfortunately, they had a positive test inside their Tier 1 bubble, which includes student-athletes, coaches, managers, and some support staff. So that wiped out some non-conference games when they first got paused back in late November, early December. And then, unfortunately, another positive test occurred within the last couple of weeks, which caused the first 4 league games to be canceled, as they were supposed to open the season on the 12th and 13th at Northern Kentucky, and then we're supposed to go to Green Bay this weekend on the 19th and 20th, but unfortunately all 4 of those games got canceled due to some positive tests within the program. So I know that they've been diligent about contact tracing and quarantining and doing all the proper things, you know, in accordance with the CDC guidelines and the local health department. So I know it's been diligent. I know they've been trying to get as much work in as they can. For those girls who aren't quarantined, they've been practicing and trying to get some work in. And now the next chance to open the season comes January 1st, New Year's Day, at home against Wright State, which will be a tough challenge. But I know everybody's focused and getting back on the floor and looking forward to hopefully January 1st at home against Beagley Center to open this thing up.
January 1st is the first game, but what's the date that the team can kind of get back into the gym as a team and start to kind of practice and get back into the groove of basketball?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on all the details. A lot of that stuff, is privy to the team and the program. I would assume that, here soon and late in December, they'll be able to get back on the floor. I'm not sure how many practices or, exactly how much time they'll have to get back up to speed. But I know that, they'll be looking to get back on the floor as soon as possible. Hopefully here, I would think in the next couple of weeks to have some time to get ready for Wright State on January 1st. And, this is a program that's really excited about what they have coming back this year. I'm sure we'll get into more of the details of the team, but, they have a lot of returners back. They return pretty much the whole of their team from a year ago that went 13-17, showed some promise, obviously suffered some injuries last year that really kind of set the team back a little bit. Mary Dunn obviously being out was a huge loss. Their first-team all-conference center. She's back. You have Chelsea Olsen, who's a first-team all-conference performer at guard. McKenna Peters, who's been a tremendous player throughout her career here at YSU. Those three really lead the charge. And then you have some really talented young players. They got a lot of experience last year. So I think this is an experienced group that's ready to get back on the floor, and I think that's the good thing. You have some experience, some senior leadership that can help this team through this period where they're not playing. And I know just, hearing from some of the coaches and players, all they want to do is get on the floor. So hopefully January 1st that can happen.
Dre, these first 4 games that were lost in Horizon League play, are these 4 games going to be made up at some point?
Ron, that's a great question. I don't think so as of now. I know that they did some shuffling of the schedule. So rather than us going to Northern Kentucky on the first weekend, Robert Morris went down to Northern Kentucky and played them in place of us. But I know the Green Bay games, and it looks like Cleveland State is going to be playing at IUPUI this weekend. They were a team that also had some games canceled because of COVID situation. So, I'm not sure what the league's plan is. I think it's a fluid situation. I think that they're just kind of on the fly like we've seen throughout football season. In the early part of basketball season, I think they're trying to do some shuffling around and figuring out who can play who. Like I said, Robert Morris went down and played Northern Kentucky in our place since their games got canceled against Cleveland State. So just a lot of fluidity, a lot of changes. Not 100% sure on what the league's plan is. I think that there's a minimum number of games that teams have to meet to make the NCAA tournament. So that'll be interesting to see how many games get canceled, how it affects seasons, and what those numbers look like. But as of now, I don't believe those games are being rescheduled. So as of now, they're just canceled, and we won't play Northern Kentucky and Green Bay, which could be a positive. Obviously, with the way Northern Kentucky has started their season, they swept the opening weekend against Robert Morris, and then also Green Bay, who lost their first 2 games, but we know how tough they are year in, year out. So it'll be interesting to see, but as of now, I don't believe those games are being rescheduled.
Now, when we've been talking to Robert Schmidt the last couple of weeks with the men's program, and we've been bringing up mental health and what they're doing on their side to kind of, gauge that. From your perspective and your perspective of the women's program and how important mental health is to that team, and what kind of things the program's doing to make sure that not just physical health, but the mental health is staying where it needs to be during all this quarantine?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and it's a bigger issue, I think, for student athletes than people realize. This is their livelihood. This is what they love to do, is be on the floor and play basketball. And when that's taken away from you, obviously there's a lot of disappointment and a lot of frustration. So I know the team's been frustrated. They haven't been able to get on the floor. They've been working like crazy since the off season to get back and be ready to play, especially for these upperclassmen that still feel like they still have some unfinished business. But, I know the team's been, doing weekly Zoom calls where the coaches and players are on there communicating. I know Coach Barnes and his staff have been very active, and making sure that the players are okay and doing the things that they need to do and focused on, their academics as well with the semester just finishing up. But I think a lot of it is just keeping them engaged as much as possible, whether that's practicing when you can, getting on the floor, getting extra work in, or staying engaged on Zoom calls, film sessions, things like that. So I think there's been a lot of virtual communication throughout all of this, and I think that's something the women's program has done a good job of, is just keeping in touch with all the players, making sure everybody's doing okay, whether it be through a quarantine or not being able to be on the floor. So, it's a tight-knit group. That's one thing about this program that I've had the opportunity to learn traveling with them for the last, 4 or 5 years. It's a tight group. It's a family atmosphere. They're friends off the floor as much as they are teammates on the floor. So I think that the team really sticks together in that regard. So I think that, and having that senior leadership, having players like Chelsea Olsen and Mary Dunn and McKenna Peters who have been through it, have been here and kind of know the lay of the land. I think they've helped some of the younger players through the challenges of this season. So it's definitely been a year like no other, and hopefully they can get back on the floor here soon and get some normalcy, which is just something we haven't been able to have.
Dre Smith joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. Dre, when play does resume, Anthony and I have been talking about this. How the heck do you stop this offense? Because when the perimeter game is on, you have to hold them accountable, and then if you hold them accountable, now you got an unbelievable inside game because YSU has some big girls. I mean, they're 6'1" and up in 3 different roster spots, 6'1" and up, and they've got a tremendous post game. So if the perimeter game is going, and, well, historically YSU has hit threes like no one's business, you've got a really nice inside-outside game, which could make Youngstown State extremely dangerous.
Oh, you said it, Ron. You couldn't be more spot on. I mean, they finally have the pieces that Coach Barnes needs to run his system. Last year was really challenging because you didn't have that post presence. When Mary went down early in the year, suffered a knee injury in non-conference play. After just a few games, she played just 4 games a year ago. She was averaging 17 points per game, which was second in the league. And she went down, and that really changed the way YSU had to play. And then, of course, Emma Van Zanten, her backup, went out with a broken foot. So you lost your top 2 post players. Really the only true post player that was left on the team was Jen Wendler, who was a true freshman, who was thrust into a starting role when she probably wasn't ready for that. So they had to play a completely different way than they were used to playing. Coach Barnes likes to play through the post, get the ball inside, and then allow teams to come down and double and kick it out for open 3-pointers. They like to play inside out. And when those post players went down a year ago, they really had to change their lineup. They really had to go 4 guards, even 5 guards at times, and it was just a completely different system than he had run throughout his time here at YSU. So there was a lot of challenges. There was a lot of learning that went on when you have to play a completely different way than what you were preparing to, and that caused some challenges. But I think now as you look into this year, you have Mary Dunn back, you have Emma Van Zanten back, you have Jen Wendler with a year of experience, you have 3 really talented post players coming back, and then you add a freshman in Nneka Obazor, who is a 5'10" freshman out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. They really are excited about her. She is a powerful, athletic post player who can really bring some skill to that group as well. So you have a lot of tremendous post players, and that opens up the 3-point shot. As we mentioned, with Mary Dunn and Emma Van Zanten, doing what they can do inside, teams are going to have to collapse and respect that post game. And when they do, you kick it out to some open shooters, such as Chelsea Olsen, Maddie Shires, who made more threes than any YSU freshman in program history last year. You have players like McKenna Peters who can shoot it, Malia Magestro, a freshman from nearby Hermitage, Pennsylvania. Ton of players. They got a lot of experience last year. Taylor Pettit, a guard from Wisconsin. Maddie Albaugh from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. So a lot of young players who are going to be ready to shoot when the ball is kicked out. And this is a team that's made 200 3-pointers in 10 straight seasons. They're one of only 11 programs in the nation to do that. So we know what kind of ability they have to shoot the basketball. So with the post presence and the outside shooting, I think people are going to be really excited when they see the Penguins take the floor.
You brought up a really good point earlier when you were talking about they're finishing up their semester. Is one of the positives when they get to gear back up, they'll at least have, they'll be on break, so they won't have to. They'll be able to focus completely on basketball that in that time frame where they're trying to gear back up to restart. Do you think that'll be one of the positives they can kind of bring into that time and trying to get back into a rhythm?
Absolutely. I think that'll be really nice. When you come back from Christmas break and everything like that, the only thing that's happening is basketball. And I think all the girls and the coaches love that time of year when school's out and you can kind of just focus on basketball. And I think that'll be a big help, too, with all the challenges they've faced in terms of COVID and quarantining and being off the floor. I think everybody's really excited just to get back to the game. And you're right, that time of year is extremely exciting when you only have basketball to worry about. Is exciting, and I think it helps with game planning. The girls aren't worried about academics and things like that. They can just lock in on the game plan and lock in on what they need to do. And let's face it, all these teams that have played in the Horizon League, most of them anyway, have got a lot of games under their belt now. And, it's going to be challenging for Youngstown State when they take the floor. I mean, they have not played a game since last March in a competitive environment. So this is going to be a challenge to get acclimated, for a program that normally would have already played, 10, 15 games. And a lot of teams have, 5, 7 games under their belt. They're going to be really behind the 8 ball when it comes to getting acclimated to competitive basketball. So I think that's a positive, that they'll be able to focus just on the game plan and just on what's in front of them as they take on Wright State when they come to town January 1st.
Dre, is there any chance that Youngstown State could play a non-conference game prior to January the 1st against Wright State?
As far as I am aware, no. I think it is, as of right now, unless something changes, the plan is to play January 1st against Wright State to open up the season. Obviously, with these times and this, world that we're living in, things can change, and I wouldn't rule out anything. But as far as I'm aware, January 1st against Wright State will be the first game of the year here at Beagley Center in a doubleheader with the men's program. So, as far as I know, I think it's going to be Wright State to be the first game of the year.
I didn't realize how cozy Beagley Center can be when you put a curtain behind the second section, the GA seats, that's at court, not court level, but behind the chairback seats, and you put them all the way back because they fold. So you put them all the way back. You put a curtain behind them. I had no idea how cozy Beagley Center looks when you just have the chairback seats and you have the balcony on either side. This is a really cool looking setup without the GA seats.
Yeah, it's been interesting to have the first 2 men's games. Obviously, the men beat Point Park and then beat West Virginia Tech on Monday. And having you there, you got to experience that. It definitely was different. Things looked different with the first 3 rows on each side pushed back. The fans social distance, like you said, the GA seats pushed in, and I think it's a good environment. I think that it creates an intimate environment for the fans and for the game. Obviously, we've had to do some things differently this year with the COVID situation and protocols and adhering to guidelines and different guidelines from the local health department. So things look a bit different at Beagley this year, but I think fans will find that it's an intimate environment. Like you said, it's cozy. You can still spread out and social distance and follow all the mandates that need to be followed, but enjoy the basketball game as well. So, I think it's been a good environment. Obviously, we appreciate the fans that came out to the first 2 men's games. It's different. It's not the same old environment that we're used to, but at the same time, it was good to have fans there. It was good to have basketball played at Beagley Center to get a couple of wins and get the men's program moving. So hopefully the women can follow here January 1st, and we can continue enjoying that atmosphere at Beagley Center.
I know we're trying to get a basketball season kind of up and rolling, but are there any updates on plans or scheduling or anything like that for the fall sports that are trying to kind of gear up and get some kind of a season in the spring?
Yeah, I think that the leagues are still working through all of that. Right now I know that in addition to basketball, there's planning that's trying to be made for volleyball and soccer, those sports that were affected in the fall, which is unfortunate. I would imagine that there's going to be some announcements soon as we move toward the new year. I would imagine that you'll start seeing some schedules and things like that for January, possibly into February. Not exactly sure what that's going to look like in terms of scheduling, but I do think that there's progress being made in terms of seeing some announcements in terms of volleyball and soccer. And then, of course, you have your spring sports that are going to get moving. You have baseball and softball that will hopefully get some schedules here soon. You'll have track and field, who's going to try and get going in January with a meet here at Youngstown State. You're going to have our golf programs going. Lacrosse is supposed to start their season in February, their debut season as a program here at Youngstown State. So it's going to be a busy spring, and I think that's what all of us want. It's been disappointing and frustrating not having the events that we normally have over the last year or so. So I think everybody's looking forward to a busy spring if the situation allows it. But our plan is to move through this basketball season and then hopefully be starting a soccer season and a volleyball season here in the next couple of months as well. And obviously football is scheduled to kick off in late February at North Dakota State and play a spring schedule that'll move throughout April. So there's a lot going on, and hopefully you'll have some more details soon, but hopefully it'll be a busy spring for Youngstown State Athletics. I know that's what we're all looking forward to.
It sounds to me like somebody should be investing a lot in energy drinks and coffee for the athletic department and the SIDs, because y'all are going to be busier than a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest.
You're right, Ron, and we're hoping that that's the case. It being around and calling games and working around Youngstown State for so long, how busy the schedule is for us here in the athletic communications and sports information department and just the athletic department as a whole, how normally it's something going on every day, weekends, and it's been weird to not have that, since the pandemic hit, and it's been nice to have some basketball games and nice to get back in the flow a little bit, but we're looking forward to it. It's going to be crazy. We're going to have to figure out how we're working all these games and how everything's going to get done, but we welcome that. We want to see our student athletes on the field and on the court competing. I think that, it's just taken such a toll on them, as Anthony mentioned earlier, just mental health-wise and just the frustration for these kids not to be able to get on the playing field. I mean, they put so much work in. Our student athletes are up in the morning getting after it with workouts and film and practice and then the games and balancing academics. And, we've never had a better academic side of things. We've never had better student athletes in terms of what they do in the classroom. So they deserve the opportunity to get back and get back to doing what they do and making the community proud and representing this university, because they're some of the best students we have on campus, and we just want to see them compete. And if that means we got to work every day, every weekend, sleep in the office, I think we're all good with that.
Speaking of the athletic department, that first men's basketball game, it was kind of all hands on deck because, the other SIDs, their sports weren't playing yet. And I know there were some hiccups during that game, and you guys all came together and worked as a team to kind of get through it. What was that first kind of home game like for everyone in the athletic department to finally kind of get to do something for the first time since, the end of spring?
Right, yeah. It was weird. It was a different situation for sure. It was strange to be back after a long time, without an event. We've all been staying busy with certain projects, but I think where we shine and where we want to be is those events and watching our student athletes compete. So it was different. It was without the normal fan situation, with having a limited number of fans and having a different environment there. It was definitely strange, but it was exciting. We have a lot of people in this department that have worked so hard over the last few months to make that possible. Our athletic training staff, led by Ethan Solger, who's our head athletic trainer, he's done a tremendous job just following all the protocols, putting protocols in place for our department, making sure our student athletes are safe and protected when they compete, and putting all of these different guidelines in place to make sure that we could have an event. There's a lot of people who have worked really, really hard. Our facilities group, our corporate sponsorship group, our marketing team, our athletic training staff, strength and conditioning, as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that have put in a lot of work to see this come to fruition and get our student athletes back competing. We had a swim meet a couple weeks ago before the basketball game, so it was great to see our swimming and diving teams competing, and then obviously basketball as well. So it was a lot of hard work realized, and we're just looking forward to more as we move forward here.
Dre, before we let you go, and we're speaking with Dre Smith, one of the broadcasters for the YSU women's program on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline, is there an official game time for the YSU women's game against Wright State on New Year's Day?
No, the game times have not been announced yet. I know that that's something that we're working on and should be coming out soon. It's a doubleheader with the men's program, so there's going to be some details that need to be worked out. Obviously, doubleheaders are always a challenge, but going to be even more of a challenge this year with the protocols and guidelines that are in place with COVID-19 and all of the work that's going to need to be done in between games. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of work done to get the arena ready in between doubleheader games and make sure everything's sanitized and clean and prepared for the crowd that's going to be coming in. So game times have not been set yet. I'm sure that will be coming out very soon, though. I know we're working on that, but just want to make sure that the game times make sense in terms of time in between and just how the logistics of everything will work. So hopefully that will be announced soon, and when it is, everything will be at ysusports.com as always.
Thanks for coming on, Dre, and from us and everyone at the athletic department, we definitely wish you guys luck, and we're glad to see you guys having work again.
Oh, thank you so much, man. It's great to talk to you guys. Always a pleasure, and hopefully we can get this season started January 1st, and I can come on and we can talk about some games and results and how the season's going. I look forward to it.
The good news is you can now get rid of that "will work for money" or "will work for food" sign that you've been carrying around for the last 2 months, all right?
That's right. We're looking forward to it.
All right, brother. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Dre Smith on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. They wanted work. They're about to get work.
J.B. Hall's still going to carry that sign because he's a mooch. So I'm just giving my cousin a little bit of a hard time.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason why when he sets up the spread for the media, there's about 30% of the food's gone before he's setting that up. I'm not saying or accusing anyone. I'm just saying,
my family can eat, so. When Jamie puts up a spread, about 30% of it's gone like that.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot. In all seriousness, these guys and gals in the SID department at YSU, good Lord, are they going to be busy?
I mean, you saw it just in the first game. There were definitely some hiccups and some setbacks and some rust, but because everyone was there and they worked so hard and they worked as a team so well. They got through that first home game for the men, and you were there too. I mean, there were definitely some kinks to work out. But from the student interns to the Trevor Parks, the head, they all just did a fantastic job.
Well, they're going to get a pat on the back and then some this year because all of them are going to be incredibly busy. And Dre does terrestrial radio for the YSU women. Jamie has been running around doing the SID for the men's basketball team. And
he'll be doing softball and he'll be doing, I think, women's soccer. I think that's with his fall sport other than, football and women's soccer.
Sure.
And then Vogel, if volleyball gets going, he'll be doing that along with women's basketball. So.
And Dre is doing men's baseball. So,
right.
While he's broadcasting women's basketball game, he's going to be doing game notes for the baseball team.
At least we'll get to help him out a little bit for baseball.
Well, exactly.
Exactly. We're partnered with YSN Baseball, so we're excited for that to get back up.
And one of the things that I look forward to is, as a broadcaster, you always rely on good game notes because those are some of the things that you definitely incorporate in your broadcast. And Dre did a fantastic job with game notes.
I worked with the volleyball team for years, and Vogel does a great job. Everyone there does just a great job at their job. Hopefully that's right because you hire someone to do a great job. So
yeah, it'll be a lot of relegating. And I say this in all seriousness for the kids that are in college right now that are looking to get into the industry. Oh my God, what a great time. Because you couldn't have picked a better time to be in college right now, because everyone's going to be wanting someone to help them out. And let's be honest, Anthony, it looks great on a resume if you're doing something before you even graduate from college. You're helping out your alma mater, your college alma mater, with some of the things that, oh, by the way, is your major.
And from the experience, the YSU, well, sports broadcasting was new when I was there. It started when I was, going into my senior year. But the TCOM, the sports broadcasting, and even the journalism do a tremendous job of getting hands-on experience for these kids. They have a studio, so they really get what it means to be inside a control room for a live broadcast. They understand what it means to run a sports broadcast, because YSU does a great job getting the students involved in every sport they broadcast. And when they do that, I think it's second to none to a lot of programs in the state that have TCOM broadcasting programs. Because you have so many opportunities for hands-on experience.
Yeah, it was next to nothing in the early 80s when I graduated from high school, and I wanted to go to college. I looked at YSU, and you guys are next to nothing in the broadcasting industry things. Right. So you go elsewhere, but my goodness, how that has changed an awful lot.
The studio in Bliss Hall was the first step.
Yeah.
And once they did that, now they have the whole media department in Stan Boss Stadium that's brand new. That was like a year after I left. Thanks a lot.
It happens. Yeah, it happens.
But I think they have definitely so many opportunities for broadcasting and sports broadcasting and telecommunications and journalism to really be hands-on experience. So many opportunities for you to have a hands-on, not just reading in a book or doing a research. You even have a great audio lab in Bliss Hall. So they have even if you're just one of those people that loves the audio production, they have great audio mixers and setups in that Bliss Hall computer lab. So I was really blown away with everything at YSU during my time there.
330-886-0813, the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline, open for business. We'll take a time out. We'll unpack some of the stuff that Dre Smith had to say.
We got some breaking news from MLB baseball on the other end of this timeout.
Indeed we do. We'll take a time out and be back with more. Stick around.
Hi, this is Tommy Clem, owner of WRS Insurance Solutions, reminding you that it is open enrollment for Medicare.
Now through December 7th, those who qualify can visit our local independent agency by calling us at 330-953-3722 or visiting us at wrsinsurancesolutions.com to learn more.
Good luck to all the student athletes in the Valley.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
2020 will be a season like we've never seen before, but 21 Sports and YSN will be there for every key moment. The plays, the players, and the stories that will headline this season. Delivered by 21 Sports and YSN.
Planning a project around your home or rental property? Trust the electrical service to the local experts with 62 years of serving the Mahoning Valley. Joe Dickey Electric is your local go-to source for responsive, reliable residential electrical work. From everyday maintenance and repairs to new installations, electrical upgrades, and safety inspections, no job is too big or too small. Call Joe Dickey Electric today, 800-549-3976, or visit DickeyElectric.com. That's DickeyElectric.com.
Myers Family Insurance knows the importance of a great team.
Our team continues to grow to help you with your Medicare and retirement needs.
The annual election period is here, so it's all hands on deck to make sure your plans still meet your needs for 2020.
Call us today.
You may find yourself in some difficulty this winter. Don't get whacked by high heating bills. Call Michael at MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning. Michael is a trusted friend who will be able to help you with many things, like getting a 95% high-efficiency furnace this winter from Rude. Michael relies on Rude, so should you. Call MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning for a free estimate, 330-259-0486, and take care of your heating and air situation.
I went to Greenwood Chevrolet because
I was really interested in looking at the tracks.
Because I wanted my dream truck.
Because I've been going there for 20 years.
I'm really happy that I went
to Greenwood Chevrolet.
Because they really went
the extra mile for me.
Now we're going the extra mile for you, only at Greenwood Chevrolet.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Point on ysnlive.com. Ron Potesta with you alongside Anthony Hardwig. And breaking news out of Major League Baseball that is going to be very confusing in terms of how the hell they're going to be able to get these statistics, but an interesting story that it has developed. Anthony, you got this. You got this story first.
Yeah, it broke about an hour ago. A lot of sources. The MLB is officially elevating the Negro Leagues to a major league status, which they weren't before. They were just considered, a separate league. So, all the stats and records from the Negro League from 1920 to 1948 are now going to be recognized as major league stats, major league records. And the players of the Negro League were now going to be recognized as Major League Baseball players.
So, conceivably, and this is where the story gets interesting, Barry Bonds can no longer be, or might no longer be, the all-time home run king in Major League Baseball. That honor may very well go to Josh Gibson. Now, here's the rub. Negro League stats are about as rare as a needle in a haystack. And the truth is, nobody knows how many home runs Josh Gibson hit. Josh Gibson, for a lot of people, that saw baseball in the early 20th century, those that saw Josh Gibson play called him the Black Babe Ruth. Those in the Negro League said, no, Babe Ruth is the white version of Josh Gibson. Either way, Josh Gibson was an amazing home run hitter with prodigious power.
Home run every 15.
One home run every 15.9 at bats, right, somewhere in that vicinity.
It's ridiculous. We don't see that.
Well, here's the problem. And Buck O'Neil mentioned this when we saw that the great job by Ken Burns did the documentary on baseball. Phenomenal. Year in and year out, that's always been my Christmas gift list. And yet I don't get it. But that's okay because I can watch, Lord knows we can watch enough of it on MLB Network because they show it. Buck O'Neil has said, before he passed away, he said numerous times, we don't have accurate statistics. So now my question is, Josh Gibson has been known to have hit anywhere from 800 to 1,000 home runs during his career in the Negro Leagues. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, if you on the bottom end of this, 800, okay, that's more than what Barry Bonds hit. And 1,000 obliterates anything that Barry Bonds hit, but we don't know the exact number. So do you honestly sit back and say, well, Josh Gibson hit at least 800, so we're going to give him the crown? Well, wait a second. If you give him the crown, then you got to get a number. So that number is going to be synonymous with 714 Babe Ruth, 755 Henry Aaron. Otherwise, what's the point in doing this?
I think this goes way past stats, and this goes into recognizing the 3,400 players that were at that level that just weren't allowed to play Major League Baseball and saying, you did play Major League Baseball, you are a Major League Baseball player. And finally, it's way overdue, finally giving those players recognition for what they did.
Oh, there's no question. There should have been a long time ago, but there's recognition, right, and then there's putting these guys into the record books when the records from the Negro Leagues is inaccurate at best.
And I'm sure they'll go through it and they'll say these are stats we can use, these are stats that are gray area, et cetera, et cetera. But like I said, I think it goes way past putting stats in the record book. I don't think that's Major League's major concern with this decision. I think it was just making sure that from now on, forever history, those players are not just put off to the side as they were in the Negro Leagues. They were Major League Baseball players, and if they have legitimate stats that we can use, they're going to be put into the Major League Baseball record books.
Okay, 3 guys that are obvious franchise players, had Major League Baseball allowed black people to play, African Americans to play Major League Baseball, which will always be the greatest stain in the history of baseball. Forget about steroids, forget about the greenies, forget about the cocaine scandal, forget about the owners locking the players out and colluding. All of that stuff is a distant, and I mean a distant, second place to the worst sin Major League Baseball has ever committed and ever will commit, not allowing everyone to play Major League Baseball. And the three guys that come to mind for me that would have been franchise players any place, anytime, anywhere. And I won't put Satchel Paige in because he did play in Major League Baseball.
He did.
He did. So I can't put him in there. Willie Mays played Major League Baseball and is the greatest offensive player in the history of the game.
Jackie Robinson started in the Negro
Jackie
Leagues,
Robinson and Henry Aaron started in the Negro Leagues. They both played in Major League Baseball. We're kicking those guys away for a second. The three guys, franchise, can't miss, superstar, greatest of all-time argument players that never played Major League Baseball. Oscar Charleston, Cool Papa Bell, and Josh Gibson. And, oh, by the way, not necessarily in that order, but all three of these guys would have been franchise players in Major League Baseball.
I can't agree with you more. And this is just another reason that if you're ever in Kansas City, you need to go to the Negro League Hall of Fame and just dive into that history, because now all of a sudden all those players that you go into that museum and you see about, they're all recognized now as officially Major League Baseball players. They're not separate anymore, and it's about time. I mean,
well, get some of these guys to be inducted into Cooperstown then.
Please.
Yeah, it needs to happen then. Now, here's the question. And you've gone to Kansas City. I mean, your family has family in Kansas City, and that's why you wear your garbage gear that want to be we want a championship, and hopefully Buffalo gets an opportunity. But I digress. How many phone calls do you think the Negro League Museum is getting about now, asking, do you guys really have some pertinent statistics?
Sorry we didn't make this phone call like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but we need some information.
We don't know anything about these guys in terms of statistics. Can you help a brother out here? We really need some statistics in something, anything, please.
I bet a lot of inquiries are being had to Kansas City right now for everything that like that. Even information about some of the franchises back then. I mean, the Kansas City Monarchs and all the players that were on that team. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's about time.
Josh Gibson's great grandson, Sean Gibson, was just asked about this, and I guess he might be one of the only people left.
Quick.
Yeah, and Sean Gibson, here's a quote: "These guys could have been just as good or great as Babe Ruth or Ty Cobb. Now, Josh will be in several of those top categories. Hey, man, it's a great day. Christmas came early." This opens up a can of a lot of worms, because, and I know that the folks that are not really on board with this are going to say, well, wait a second. Come on. It's not Major League Baseball. It was, some of these guys could have been Major League players, but a lot of these guys were watered down. Well, hang on a second. Let me flip this argument for just a second, okay? Because I know a lot of folks are going to sit back and use that as an argument. Let me flip the argument another way. And look, let me preface all of this by saying I had an interesting 20-minute interview with Buck O'Neil when I was in minor league baseball. We honored Jackie Robinson on Jackie Robinson night at Jackie Robinson Ballpark in Daytona. And he and I had about a 20-minute conversation. It was a really, really fun conversation, and I'm so glad that I was able to talk with him before he passed away. He said, and I'll just basically paraphrase what he said into my argument. As much as people can sit back and say, okay, the Negro Leagues was a bunch of kids that couldn't play in the major leagues and a smattering few that could play in the major leagues, and it's kind of watered down. The flip side of it is, all right, Major League Baseball was a bunch of guys that couldn't play Major League Baseball had it not been for the fact that Major League Baseball didn't allow blacks and Latinos to play Major League Baseball. So this was every much as watered down as the Negro Leagues were.
We've brought it up. I mean, there were a handful of really good pitchers that a lot of hitters didn't get to see in the major leagues because they were African American. They weren't allowed to play.
Yeah,
and would those hitters be as good if they had to go up against those pitchers?
I mean, look, Babe Ruth had a bunch of major league players barnstorming through the South playing the Negro League teams, and they were getting their ass kicked. I mean, this isn't one of these things where, oh, well, you know, I don't know how good these guys. It's baseball. I mean, Josh Gibson would have been an unbelievable, prodigious power, the whole 9 yards. No, Josh Gibson would have been incredible in Major League Baseball. Oscar Charleston and Cool Papa Bell would have been franchise caliber, superstar, first ballot Hall of Famer, slam dunk. This isn't even up for debate kind of players. And there's numerous other players that would have been solid Major League Baseball players, no question about that.
Yeah, and when I hear, you know, the joy that it brought Sean, his great grandson, I mean, that's why you do it. You finally give the ancestors and the families of these players like some validation. Like, we understand what you guys went through. We understand how good you guys were, and we're gonna recognize you from now on as a part of Major League Baseball. And I can't say enough about how, like, what's the word? It's
long
overdue
yeah.
that this decision is.
Now, I'm good with the fact you're recognizing them as Major League Baseball players. There's no problem there. Where I'm going to have a little bit of a problem is don't try to implement statistics into this. Please don't.
Unless there are statistics that you can certify.
If you have statistics that you can certify, then we can start having that conversation. But please do not put statistics into this unless you're really 100% positive that these statistics are legit. Otherwise, you're now going into an area where I don't want to see Major League Baseball go into, because unlike the NBA, unlike the NFL, unlike the NHL, Major League Baseball's statistics are very sacred. They're very, you don't mess with these. I mean, Joe DiMaggio's a 56-game hitting streak. If someone from the Negro Leagues had a hitting streak longer than 56 games, you better make damn sure that that's 100% accurate before you start taking Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak down. If someone played more than 20-some-odd hundred games for Cal Ripken, you better make damn sure that that number's legit before you take that number down. 700 and, what is it for Bonds? 765, something of that nature. You better make sure that number is accurate before you take the number down. And whether you hate Bonds, love Bonds, in between, I don't care. Those numbers are very sacred, and you cannot mess with those numbers unless you have really accurate numbers to replace them with. And that's where the problem is, because the Negro Leagues didn't have the funds Major League Baseball had. So they didn't have the statistics or the people to have those statistics on a consistent level, and that's where this could be a little different.
I think not just calls to Kansas City, people are probably going and scrounging any like serious memorabilia collector to find whatever they can.
Yeah. Oh, the historians are being called. There's no two ways about that. There's going to be baseball historians called all over the place, and this is where things can get very fascinating. I look forward to seeing what the Negro Leagues and the statistics are like, because we looked up. One of the first things I did when we were on break, I said, wait a second, Barry Bonds' record's in serious jeopardy here, because Josh Gibson had a ridiculous amount of home runs in the Negro Leagues, and I knew that he was an astronomical amount. Now, unfortunately, nobody has an exact number. The couple of sources that I went to said Josh Gibson hit a minimum of 800 home runs in his Negro League career. Well,
if you can validate that he at least hit 800.
Yeah, but the problem is you don't have a number.
Right.
So I can't put him down as the all-time home run leader in Major League Baseball because he didn't play Major League Baseball, but they're now treated as an equal to Major League Baseball. You can now say professional baseball.
What you can do is you can put him in the Hall of Fame.
Well, and he belongs in the Hall of Fame. There's a number of these guys that most definitely belong in the Hall of Fame. And by the way, Gibson is in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame induction, 1972. So Josh went in a long time ago, but it's this is unbelievable. A great day for the Negro Leagues. No two ways about that. It's Josh Gibson, by the way. An interesting story about him. He passed away at 35. He was a real young guy, and the fact that he never got an opportunity to play in Major League Baseball, it turned him into a raging alcoholic, and he died very very young in life.
And unfortunately, back then there were a lot of reasons to kind of slip into depression, and
no question.
And there's a lot of reasons now. I mean, don't give me, but like people don't understand like that was a time when it was really easy to let yourself kind of go, and he succumbed to it. And it's just an unfortunate thing that we didn't see. And that's probably 35. That's probably 3 or 4 more years he could have played baseball legitimately. We don't get to see it. Okay,
so I'm doing some more, looking and whatnot.
He's digging.
According to a and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, Hembekides, Paul Hembekides. Barry Bonds was quoted at one point when he broke Hank Aaron's home run record. He was at one point quoted as saying, "No, in my heart it belongs to Josh Gibson." Well, this person has said unofficially, Josh Gibson was credited with 962 career home runs, exactly 200 more than the 762 home runs that Barry Bonds hit in his Major League Baseball career.
Now, if they can confirm that, then that's a number that probably will never be broken.
No, there's no way that number gets broken. I mean, you'd have to 962. Even to give you an idea of how incredible that number is, if you averaged 40 home runs over 20 years, you're still 162 home runs short.
Which is shorter than Barry Bonds was, because Barry Bonds, it was 200.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous.
You'd have 800 home runs, but you'd still be 162 home runs short. You'd have to homer every game for the next baseball season, and that doesn't happen, in order for you to get the 962 home runs. That's ridiculous. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. And we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. And the key word in that is unofficially.
Right. And I don't think you're going to find official career stats. I think that's going to be hard. They might find, but there might be some in-game records that they can say, hey, this guy has the record for most steals in a game or whatever, home runs in a game, strikeouts in it, whatever it may be. There might be some game records they can find in the Negro League that surpass what MLB currently is.
All right, now Jared Diamond is tweeting out, the Seamheads Negro League's database lists 238 official home runs for Josh Gibson. Now, that's a stark difference between 962. However, he also said that Josh Gibson had a .441 batting average in 1943, so he would be the last 400 hitter.
No, that's one that you can certify and put him in.
If that is the case, then there you go. Interesting, very interesting. And I know some folks may lose their marbles about this because everyone loves the fact that stats are whatever.
Don't love stats so much that you lose the importance of this decision and the importance of putting these guys on the same level. Don't let stats get in the way. Because stats are... I know everyone loves numbers in baseball, but at the end of the day, they're numbers. They go way past what this is about. And it would be a shame for you to be upset about this decision because you don't want your stats hurt. I mean,
interestingly enough, I remember Josh Gibson having when I had this conversation. Josh Gibson, or not Josh Gibson. Good Lord, just lost the Buck O'Neil. There we go. Buck O'Neil. It blew my mind when he said, he basically nonchalantly said this. He goes, well, he said, we were playing in the major league ballparks, and the owners were getting a lot of rent money from us, and it was more of a business decision than anything else. We have separate leagues. The owners can make more money because when the Yankees were on the road, the New York Negro League team would play at Yankee Stadium. So the owner of the Yankees, who owned the Yankee Stadium, was getting full rent for every single day. The Chicago, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, because the Negro League teams would play either at Comiskey or Wrigley Field. So one of the Chicago owners was getting double rent. And he was saying, it was a business decision that the major league owners loved because they got double tenants back then. Now, obviously, we would have loved to have played Major League Baseball, but the major league owners, he implied that it wasn't as much racism as it was they're making a lot of money off of these teams playing in the major league ballpark. So he implied that it wasn't as much racism as it was these teams and these owners making a ridiculous amount of money more than they would normally make. And I kind of looked at that and I was like, wait a second. That's something that we were never said. No one ever publicly said about that. But if you look back, it kind of makes sense. I mean, I still don't completely buy it. I think there was a lot more to do with it than that. But it makes a little bit more sense if you're adding on top of that.
When you see the initial reaction of Jackie Robinson coming into the league, there was still a lot of,
of
we
course.
Don't want them in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, it was also a business windfall, but
sure.
I don't think that was like, hey, they can play, but let's not do it because we're making money.
It was a little bit of both, and it was definitely a little bit of both. But there's no question that there was a lot of backlash, especially when Jackie Robinson came into the show, except, of course, for our very own Shotgun Shuba, who in Montreal was the guy that shook the hand of Jackie Robinson after he hit a home run, hence the reason why the statue that is being erected as we speak of Shotgun Shuba shaking hands with Jackie Robinson is going to be unveiled next April. And Lord willing, Rachel Robinson, the widow of Jackie Robinson, will be there. She's well into her 90s, and I'm really hoping when they dedicate that statue that Jackie Robinson's widow, Rachel Robinson, will be in Youngstown for that, because that's going to be a hell of a moment. And I just wish that Shotgun Shuba was still alive to enjoy this moment as well. But I know his family is still very much alive and well and living in Youngstown. So this is going to be a great moment when that statue is finally dedicated, because that's definitely something long overdue. And unfortunately, 42, an outstanding movie that had the late, great Chadwick Boseman playing Jackie Robinson, they never alluded to that. And I wish they would have. Wish they would have alluded to that.
There's a lot that when you look at the story of Jackie Robinson, there's things you have to tell. Storylines you have to tell. And there's so many there that it was as a filmmaker, trying to decide what to tell, what not to tell, what to cut. I thought it was a great movie.
It was.
And it's one of those ones where Chadwick Boseman went on record and said, this is so important because this movie is going to be a lot of generations' idea of what Jackie Robinson is.
Absolutely.
Because there's no, no one saw him play, everything like that. So for a lot of people, this movie is going to be what they look at when they think of Jackie Robinson, and that makes it abundantly important.
Yeah, no question. And the only disappointing part of it was that symbolic handshake that made the cover of Life magazine which was a big deal because Life magazine was the magazine. It was a big deal, and I wish they would have broached that. But otherwise, great movie. Holy crap, was that a good movie? And we lost Chadwick Boseman way the hell too early in life because he had some iconic roles.
I'm so impressed that he was able to film stuff under. He was filming things when he was dealing with chemo and no one really knew about it. Like, he went to work after chemo stuff and did these amazing roles. And
his last film is coming out, I want to say later this month or early next year with Viola Davis. That looks unbelievably good.
It's always eerie to see movies from people who have died before the movie comes out.
Yeah.
Like Heath Ledger when Dark Knight came out. It's really weird because you knew that was the last time you were going to see him in something.
Yeah. It's kind of like watching Alex Trebek with Jeopardy now because they're going to show his last filming until
I think it's Christmas. Yeah, I think Christmas is the last episode.
Yeah, it's weird seeing that. So we're going to take a time out on the other side. John Vargo will be joining us. We're back in a second for the last go. You had to go there. Yeah.
We're going to have a nice send-off.
We will have a nice send-off for John Vargo. That's coming up after this timeout. Stick around.
Baird Brothers remains your source for fine hardwood products. For the time being, we're open for customer pickup only on weekdays, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday from 9 a.m. till noon. Place your order online at bairdbrothers.com. Baird Brothers, for the place you love.
Quality, customer service, and integrity. Those are the 4 words that have driven our success since 1957 at Joe Dickey Electric.
Joe Dickey Electric is one Mahoning Valley landmark business that stays current with the requirements of our customers. Family owned and managed, we are an electrical contractor and energy solutions provider. Every member of our team adds to his or her skill set through ongoing training. Residential, commercial, industrial, automotive, and more. We keep ahead of the needs of our customers with a fleet of more than 50 vehicles and 24/7 emergency service, so you're never left in the dark.
The 4M Company, being an architect and construction manager for over 40 years, has had the opportunity to use many different electrical businesses for our projects. The depth, quality, and knowledge and attention to detail displayed by Dickey Electric makes them stand out above all the rest.
For state-of-the-art expertise and a timeless commitment to our customers, contact Joe Dickey Electric. We are everything electrical.
Armstrong Local Programming has always delivered an exclusive and unique perspective on the very best events your region offers. High school sports, community events, parades, all your favorite shows from Armstrong are now calling the Neighborhood Channel their home.
Watch Out and About, Locally Speaking, and many other great local shows right here on the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel.
Find out everything that the Neighborhood Channel has to offer at ArmstrongNeighborhood.com. Spirit, town pride, local communities. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Right now is a great time to get more for your trade-in at Tri-State Ford and drive home in a new or pre-owned vehicle. Choose from our great selection of new Ford models or pre-owned vehicles. Plus, get the Tri-State Ford Advantage, including a 10-year, 200,000-mile warranty and more. At Tri-State Ford, we'll pay you top dollar for your trade, but you don't have to purchase one of ours to sell us yours.
Customer focus, community driven. Tri-State Ford East Liverpool or visit tristateford.net.
Welcome back to a Wednesday edition of Running Points on ysnlive.com. Ron Potesta with you alongside Anthony Hardwig, and we are joined on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline, and joined for the last time, unfortunately, as a member of the Tribune Chronicle and Vindicator as a sports writer, the esteemed John Vargo. John, how are you today, sir?
Good. How you guys doing today?
We're doing wonderful, and I suppose the cat is already out of the bag. So let's address that elephant in the room. You had an opportunity to cover the Penguins for the final time against West Virginia Tech. You're moving a different direction in life.
I am going to be joining the Business Journal, Youngstown Business Journal, at the beginning of the year. I'll be doing some of the brain gain. If you read that, I'll be doing about 60% of that. Maybe some sports enterprise, but mostly covering local businesses around here. I think it's a welcome change in my career at this point, Ron, and I'm very much looking forward to the challenge.
All right, I got to ask you, and this is probably on the spot, and it'll make you think for a little bit, but of all the things that you have done at the Tribune and most recently at the Vindicator when the two merged together, what are some of the top stories and what are some of the top memories that you have as a sports writer, whether it be high school coverage, YSU coverage? What are some of the lasting memories that you're going to have in your writing career at the Tribune, Chronicle, and the Vindicator?
Well, I'm putting together my final column, which will probably appear in Friday's paper, I think, at this point. But I'm still racking my brain at that. But I got to cover in 2011. I got to cover the NCAA tournament up in Cleveland, and I got a credential up there, and that's definitely one of the highlights of my career at the Tribune is going there. I got to see my team, Syracuse. I was court away from Jim Boeheim, who I've had the utmost respect for years, being a Q's fan since the mid-'80s. I've got to see Ohio State play. I got to see the Q pretty much almost to capacity, especially for that Sunday game when they played, I think it was West Virginia then. It's been so long ago, but I was up there for all of those sessions, all of those games, and it just took everything in. It was one of the most magical moments in my career at the Tribune.
And when you kind of reflect and you look at the people you've worked with and the teams you've had gotten to cover in the Valley, what are some of like the best relationships you've had and the people you're gonna I want to say miss because it's like you're going away, but the people you're gonna miss working with the most and maybe the relationships you've built not just with the writers at the Tribune but also the coaches and the players that you've been able to cover over the years.
Well, first of all, I got to give a shout out to my coworker Joe Simon, and that's one of the hardest parts of leaving the Tribune is leaving him because he has been not only a great coworker but a great friend over the years, and I'm really going to miss working with Joey. And he's been he's pretty much kept my spirits up, throughout the years. So it's like, and it's been a great run. But also, I want to shout out to YSU men's basketball coach and women's basketball coach, Jerry Calhoun and John Barnes. Both of those guys, not only great coaches, but great human beings. I mean, I've really gotten to know the YSU men's program over the years. It feels like I've grown up, watching Naz Bohannon, Garrett Covington, Michael Akuche. I mean, I've seen those guys, from day one, and it's just wow. It's just been amazing. I mean, I'm going to try to see if I can make their senior day. Hopefully, if my work schedule allows. But it's those guys have been, instrumental, especially the latter couple years in my career here at the Tribune and Vindicator. But also, I wanted to give another shout out to track and field and cross country. Those guys have been just amazing to cover. It's like, I know cross country is not the sexiest sport to cover, and it's not the people. It's not a media friendly sport. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's like TV. You won't see TV, clamoring at the finish line, getting every emotion that, pours out of, each athlete as they cross the finish line and how they get there and, through the snow, the mud, the rain, the heat, everything, it's like what those athletes go through is just nothing short of amazing, especially in my eyes, what they do. And track and field, I've been to every track and field meet since 2001 state meet. And it's just, this past year I had to go down to Columbus and went down with a friend and just saw the empty track in early June, because it was just a pilgrimage you usually make every year. So it's like to see the multiple state champions from this area and team champions as well. I mean, the one that really stands out for me is the 2010 team, which I did the 10-year anniversary this summer for Warren G. Harding boys track and field team. And those guys were just not only great athletes, but just great human beings. And it was so great to revisit with Andrew Zitnick, Marvin Logan, DJ Williamson, just to talk to those guys once again, because it just brought up a good memories just following those guys as Charles Penny, led those gentlemen, to the state championship and to the pinnacle, of Warren sports history.
John Vargo joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. John, you mentioned last spring, or actually early summer, at the stadium in Columbus, where you went down and saw the empty track and field location, where we would normally have all kinds of people in attendance, and the participants and the timers, judges, inspectors, and all the other dignified people to take on the huge undertaking of the OHSAA track championships. Is that perhaps the saddest thing that you saw or had to cover last year, John?
Yeah, it was. I just, McDonald boys and girls would have ended up at least top three for each, if not one of the two, if not both of them, winning state championships last year. The amount of talent they had was unbelievable. I mean, nothing will ever compare to what Miles Dunlap and Matthias Ayala did in 2011. I mean, those are once-in-a-generation athletes. I mean, both of those guys are elite college-level athletes, and to have that at a Division III school, especially two of them, and to lead your team to a state championship was just amazing to see back in 2011. But they had great distance cores for both teams, and they had a well-rounded team for both of them that probably could have made a run at a state title, if not one for both of them. I mean, it's a great distance community for McDonald, and I just felt bad, especially those seniors, because as you know, my son is a senior, it's like, and I just felt the angst for them, it's like I knew they wouldn't get that one last chance around the track. They wouldn't get their name, heard over the podium. They wouldn't get up on the podium again and just, look over the crowd. It wasn't meant to be. So, but I know some of them are off to college, but some of them are not, and it's just one of those sad things of this coronavirus this year. And one of the tragedies, it's like, and I don't want to make light, and I know a lot of people have died because of corona, and I don't want to make light of that, but it's just hard to see these athletes, not get one last chance out there on the field.
And you said that your son's a senior this year, so you kind of got to experience what it was like to see seniors kind of treasure every game because you don't know if it's going to be a next one. How important or memorable was it to you to kind of have this fall and be the last fall you cover sports with your son being a senior at Mooney?
Oh, that was just unbelievable. I have never experienced anything like this the last couple of years. I mean, this past senior year, being at every one of his games was just and unfortunately, I am kind of a little lost for words right now. It's just, you had so much pent-up emotion for each game, and I was wondering, early in my career, I've seen these parents, in the stands. It's like, how in the world are they so obnoxious there? Well, guess what? I was one of those obnoxious people in the stands. It's like, I'll be honest with you guys. There was a game, St. V this year, and I'll readily admit this. I almost got thrown out. I almost got thrown out of the game because my son got made a challenge for the ball in the box, got penalized for it, and they got a penalty kick, and they got a free goal off of that. Then he got a direct kick off another one he had, and I think I probably would have lost it if he would have got carded at that point. So it's like, but I heard from another fan of ours that on the feed, apparently St. V fans had should probably went to confession the next day because they had a lot of adult, I wouldn't even say adult words, coming out of their mouths that day. So it's like.
John Vargo joining us on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. So I take it that you're not going to be writing an article anytime soon about well, you're not supposed to do this as a parent because that would be hypocritical at this point.
No, it's like, I get it. It's like, and it took for me to have my son, and my daughter's already put me on notice already, for her volleyball career coming up. So, and that's going to be interesting. I don't know how I'm going to approach that, just being a dad and seeing that there because I've covered volleyball, but I just don't have the wherewithal that I learned from, and I'm sure I'll probably learn over the years, the intricacies of volleyball, but I don't know if it was going to be different for me, watching her games as opposed to Eric's games.
Okay, so. I feel like Anthony Hardwig should be Professor Hardwig at this point, giving you volleyball 101 tips.
I'll bring you under my wing. I'll give you some volleyball tips next time we see each other, and teach you the intricacies of the sport.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. So, hey, any knowledge I can have dropped on me, I would appreciate.
You've done a solid for us during soccer season because I'll tell you, a lot of people here at YSN, that was the fear of soccer. We just didn't have people that had knowledge. So, and talking to you every week while some of our teams made a run, it was just a solid because we got to, put some soccer knowledge on YSN, which is invaluable.
Well, I'll be honest with you guys. It took me a while to figure out offsides, and I still haven't. And my son yells at me. He said, "Dad, how in the world don't you understand offsides?" It's like, okay, you can't be past the last defender. But I never. That is one thing I will never do is yell at, criticize a referee for calling offsides because I don't have their angle. I don't have their angle they see because I will excuse it all day long because unless I have that same angle, I don't know what they see. It's like, and it's hard to call. It is a hard call, and I commend those guys for getting out there every week and put up with people and just doing their thing for little to no pay.
John Vargo, our guest on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. All right, I'm going to say this because it's true and not because you're on the show. Whoever replaces you has enormous shoes to try to fill because what I loved about you as a beat reporter for the YSU men's and women's basketball program, you gave everyone respect. You were a professional through and through, and obviously the YSU men appreciated the incredible job that you've did because, they rewarded you with a pretty nice little parting gift after the WVU Tech game with YSU, and the respect factor is right there. I want to ask, and feel free to to give as much advice as you can, but if someone were wanting to get into the journalism business, what are some of the things that you would try to tell a 16 or a 17-year-old kid to do while they're still in high school and on into college, John?
Do you want me to give my honest answer? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, get another major.
There you go.
I'll be honest with you. I told my son, and he's going to do video editing, and that's what he wants to do right now. And I told him, I said, don't you dare get to journalism. It's like, it's just, I just don't feel like most places have it. And fortunately, I am going to one of those places where I feel like I have a lot of backing and a lot of great support. So that's one of the reasons I made the move to the Business Journal. I just feel like they have, great writers there. They have great advertising. They support their staff there, and that's the vibe I've got, and that's one of the main reasons I'm going to the Business Journal. I just feel like it's a great move for my career, and I can still, write and represent this valley the best I can.
John, is there any chance that the Business Journal has a sports thing that you can that you can hang your hat on, or are we done with the sports aspect of John Vargo's life in the Business Journal employment?
I think mostly it's probably going to be a lot of business writing, and that's and like I said before, that's okay with me, and I'm fine with that. And I feel like I've lived my cycle and I've done everything I can as a sports writer, and I feel that I've reached that pinnacle. Yes, I would like to see YSU men's basketball and that, but that's probably for somebody else to do right now, and that's for somebody else to take that beat, somebody else to cover track and field and cross country and boys basketball and girls basketball and all the other sports around the valley here. So that's for somebody else right now, because I'll be honest with you guys, for me, that I can go to a job and come home at night and spend time with my family. I think that's more important for me in my career.
Well, if a kid decides to go against your device and has that passion for journalism and can't avoid scratching that itch, there are several journalism departments in colleges in the foreseeable area. Kent State has a really good journalism department. I think Ohio U has a really good journalism department. YSU, of course, the journalism/broadcasting is really strong. What kind of things
I'm a product of Kent State University. Right. I'm a 96 graduate. So,
what kind of things would you tell them to look for as they're looking where to go into a journalism department or a journalism major?
Be versatile. I mean, because it's just not writing anymore. It's just, if you're going to go into a newspaper, you also have to have, get some broadcasting background. You're going to have some photography skills. You're going to have to, have some podcasting. You're going to have to be it's not when I came in the late 90s, and I started out in the mid 90s as a student journalist at Kent State. It's just not writing anymore, or occasional photography. It's doing a lot of things, maybe even doing, radio show, maybe even, doing, TV broadcasting as well, because there's so many aspects you have to do as a journalist. Now, you just don't have one thing you're beholden to as far as a writer. There's so many facets of being a journalist, and especially your social media skills have to be on point as well, because if they're not, you will be exposed quite quickly. So,
John Vargo from the Tribune Chronicle and Vindicator to the Youngstown Business Journal. I look forward to reading your final column, and it goes without saying you have done yeoman's work and then some, not only with the YSU men's and women's basketball program. Anything that you have done covering sports through the years, I have been a huge fan of yours, and that is not going to change anytime soon. So now, instead of talking sports with you, now you can try to figure out what the hell I can do with a 401k with as little money as I have. So there you go.
You and me both, Ron. You and me both.
Hey, don't be a stranger. We'll talk soon. All right, brother.
No problem, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Imagine me and Ron standing on a desk right now saying, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and that is your send-off.
There you go.
You guys have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, John. John Vargo, his last column in the Vindicator and Tribune Chronicle, unofficially coming out on Friday.
I feel like we just sent Spock out in space, you know?
Oh, wow.
Because that was like, it's hard to, because John Vargo's brought a lot to our show the last, 2 months.
Listen, he's as much as he's brought to this show, he brought about 1 million times more to his readers and to those that have been a fan of his, whether it be the as the beat reporter for the Vindicator and the Tribune Chronicle. And I'll be honest with you, most of the people up in Trumbull County have known his work far longer than the folks in Mahoning County, because it's only been a little over a year since we've had the opportunity to see John Vargo writing for the Vindicator, since the two companies merged into one conglomerate. So it's a tough loss.
It is, and he's still going to bring it with the Business Journal. But since we're a sports, network, we're going to miss him. We're going to miss his dedication to his sport, his professionalism, his resources, and what he brought to, our show being on every day. Like I said, during soccer season, he was the light at the end of the tunnel that gave us some soccer.
I want to know, now that he's going to go into the Business Journal, what the hell a CD is, because my idea of a CD is something you put in and listen to music. I mean, this is how financially challenged this guy is. I mean, CDs, okay.
I can finally ask him about all this business jargon that I hear on the commercials from Fidelity and some of the E-Trade and some of the other financial commercials.
I mean,
what's this mean?
Yeah, the last thing that I would remember is when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Oh, okay.
What's the one with the deer?
Hartford.
Hartford.
Yeah, the Hartford. And then
Hancock's also a business financial thing, right?
Merrill Lynch. To which
we're just throwing out.
To which the running joke that I always have is, you've got more bull than Merrill Lynch. You know, the standing bull is their symbol.
We're just throwing out shameless plugs.
Yeah, exactly. We're actually asking for people with money to support people that need money.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's my money.
Yeah, exactly. And now we're gonna go. Now we're gonna go into this song, and that's gonna be playing in your mind for the rest of time. Thank you very much, Anthony Hartwig.
I opened the door.
Oh my God! Now I've got that damn song in my mind. Wow, what is it? 877 cash now.
877 cash now.
With the oh God! Thank you very much. Now this damn thing's going to be in my mind the rest of the day.
We have a caller to save us, thank God.
Please, champ, don't sing the JJ or the JG Wentworth song. What's up, brother?
I'll do it. Those are pretty good opera singers they got on there.
Oh, hey, no doubt. It was it was a great commercial. I gave it a 10+ for originality.
Yeah, it is. And but I want to talk about college football, but I'm going to quickly talk what you mentioned about the major leagues and the Negro leagues. And the first thing that came to mind for me was that Hank Aaron played 1 year in the Negro leagues, and I was curious to see what his stats were, because he had 755 home runs, and I looked up, and once again, these stats, as you know, they're all over the place, and I'll get to Josh Gibson's, but Hank Aaron was recorded. They gave him credit for 5 home runs in the Negro Leagues, which would give him 760. So he'd still be 2 behind Bonds.
He would be behind. He would two home runs behind Barry Bonds. That's where he would be.
Right now, Josh Gibson. Whenever I look up stats of any sport, I always go to the Football Reference, Baseball Reference, and Josh Gibson has a lot of years played, 20-some years, but there's a lot of years not filled in. And he was credited on that Baseball Reference was 113 homers, and that actually is what he's credited in the Baseball Hall of Fame statistics. When you look up the Hall of Fame, that's what they have. They match similarly, but there's many years where there's nothing. And actually, the 1 year I think it was 1953 where he batted 486. That's what they have listed that year, 486. But once again, there's probably at least half, maybe 10 to 15 years where there's no records at all. So they just, I don't know if they'd have no clue what's going on with that. But 113 home runs is the one I saw with Josh Gibson. But you even mentioned that he could have over 900. He's a good example of where this is all over the place, these stats.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where, I have no problem whatsoever with Rob Manfred making the announcement that Negro League players are going to be treated as such of Major League Baseball players. They should have. And the argument that I will make is the opposite of what everyone would make, where people might sit back and go, oh, come on. I mean, there's only a smattering number of Negro League players. Most of them were journeymen that would have never gone to the major leagues. I'll make the same argument. The flip side, most of Major League Baseball, when baseball was segregated, most of Major League Baseball would not have been employed had we had African Americans and Latinos being allowed to play in Major League Baseball, or a good number of those guys would have been unemployed and would have been replaced by the elite African American and Latino American athlete.
Yeah, if Manfred wants to get this researched, if he go along with his philosophy with how he's trying to cut down that length of games, he'll probably tell him, you know what, I don't want you working more than 3 hours on this project. That's it. So I don't know how good that's going to be. But anyway,
well played, sir. Well played.
Yes, yes. You know, let me get back to this college football, because you know I think that what we see in these rankings, the debate we have all the time now is these Power 5 conferences versus and they call them the Group of Five. I mean, I don't know if you could be more derogatory than calling one a Power 5 and the other one is the Group of Five. It's like the other tenor where you don't know his name. But here's what the bottom line with this. When they set this thing up, they use the 6 bowl games, which is the Rose, Sugar, Orange, Cotton, Fiesta, and Peach. They call those the New York 6.
Yes.
And out of that, there's one spot guaranteed for the Group of Five, just one spot. And what's the big deal about that? Well, here's the situation on the revenue. Now, keep in mind, too, the NCAA controls every college sport playoff, whether it's volleyball, tiddlywinks, men and women. They control everything except the college football playoffs. They don't control that. That's the only one that stands on its own, and they don't control the revenue. The revenue is pretty much determined by these Power 6 conference bowl games. And this is the way they divide the revenue up. I was just looking this up, that there's $250 million a year goes to the Power 5 conferences, which breaks down to $50 million per conference. That's 72% of the revenue. The Group of Five gets 28% of the revenue, which breaks down to $18 million per conference. So right there, there's a big difference there, $32 million. And Notre Dame gets $1 million. I mean 1%, which is $4 million. That's how that's broken down. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, as you know, that there's been discussion about separating the Power 5 conferences from everybody else only in college football. Everything else would stay the same because the basketball revenue is done differently. All the other revenue is done differently. And granted, we know that the money that's brought in these Power 5 conferences go along to pay other sports at these universities. But the situation with a lot of these Group of Five conferences, teams especially, I've been reading a lot where a lot of them, when they don't play a football season, it's actually the financial distress on those universities is not that bad. What they get their money from is when they play a road game against a Power 5 conference, like YSU didn't get the $400,000, $500,000. But the most important thing in terms of revenue for these colleges, these smaller ones, is the enrollment of the students. That's where they get majority of their money. And the reason why they like to do these games, besides getting the money, is exposure to get more people to attend their universities. That's the bulk of the money they make because they don't get a lot of this revenue sharing. And let's be honest with you, a team like Ohio U, when they go to a bowl game, they are given tickets to sell, and that's how they make the money. And if you don't sell the tickets, you lose money. And most of these bowl games for these smaller schools, they lose money, and they have to help. The conferences have to pay money out because, as you know, they send the boosters, the band members. It's like a party for them. Unlike the power teams, they depend on that revenue because their coaches make a lot of money and they bring in a lot of revenue, but that revenue is needed. That's why specifically this year they're going to fight tooth and nail to get all these playoffs and bowl games done so they can get this revenue back to these power conferences because they're losing a lot of money. But like Youngstown State, I'm not sure if Youngstown State, by not playing, they might even break even this year by not playing football because it's expensive to have a football season, a football team for these smaller schools. But if they're not playing it, and I've read where a lot of these schools says it's not that big of a deal, we'll be okay. But these power conference teams, they depend on this billions and billions of money they get in a decade for their universities, to pay their coaches, their athletic departments, and also supply the money to some of these smaller sports like women's volleyball and golf and things like that. But where we're at right now, and there's no way, and that's why these playoffs will never expand, because they don't want these group of 5 conference teams or conferences to get any more money than they're getting already. And that's why you always see every year these teams. And I'll give you a good analogy. When Notre Dame last year, if you remember, Ron, when they lost to Michigan, the next week they came back and beat Virginia Tech. They were ranked 15th in the country that time. Now keep in mind they were an independent last year, so they're basically like a group of 5 in terms of some of these playoff committee people. So the rest of the season they went undefeated. I think they won their last 5 games, and I think they just annihilated Iowa State. So they won their last 6 games. You know, they finished 15th in the country. They moved up 1 spot from 16 to 15 in the last 6 or 7 weeks. Why? Because they didn't want Notre Dame to be in that top 10 to be able to play Florida in the Orange Bowl. Remember, that was the big rumor?
Oh, yeah.
And guess what? They didn't play there. You know why? Because they didn't want that money going to a non-power conference team. Now, Notre Dame's now in a conference. All of a sudden, they're with the good guys now. And I think it's not so much about the bias against Notre Dame, but it's the bias against teams that aren't in these power conferences, because they want them to get all the money. And that's why you'll never see an expanded playoff, because of that reason.
Well, and again, I will point out, Louisiana Lafayette beat the living hell out of Iowa State the first game of the year. This was not a fluke. They beat them 31-14. They destroyed Iowa State.
Still call it a fluke because it won't happen again.
Look, I mean, it's not a fluke. They beat them by 17 points.
It wasn't a fluke win, but the win itself could be described as a fluke, because you could say if they play 10 times, Iowa State beats them 8 out of 10 times. This is one of those times Iowa State didn't show up and they got blown out.
Well, here's the problem that I have. How is Louisiana number 19 and Iowa's number 6? Iowa State.
Because you can't put them ahead of Coastal Carolina. And Coastal Carolina's what, 13?
They're 12.
So you got to put them somewhere between 12 and 20 or whatever, because they lost to Coastal Carolina. So you can't put them ahead of Coastal Carolina. And I can't really remember who's between them and 12. I mean,
USC, Northwestern, North Carolina, Iowa, BYU, and Miami of Florida.
I guess you could move them up. I don't know why they're not ahead of BYU. They both lost to Coastal Carolina, but then Lafayette has a win over number 6, and BYU has nothing. Maybe you could put them above North Carolina, but I wouldn't put them above USC. I wouldn't put them Iowa too. There are maybe 2 or 3 teams that you could put them ahead of between 12 and 19. So maybe you could say they could be 16 or 15. But you can't put them too far up.
I'll give you another example, and Brian Driscoll is exactly right on this. If you look up the criteria for the playoff, 14 playoff, the top priority is strength of schedule. Now, they've got the thing in there where they have the strength of record and the quality of control. They have all these stats they put in that really benefits the power conference teams. And if you remember in Ohio State, when they had 2 losses, and Alabama had 1 loss, but Ohio State won their conference championship, and Alabama did not win it. Ohio State was denied. And the reason why is because the conference championship is a tiebreaker. That's what they do when they can't decide, when 2 teams, in terms of strength of schedule, are pretty even. And I'll give you an example. When did you ever hear about Cincinnati? Well, if they're a conference champion this year, they deserve to move up. No, they don't care about that. It's because their schedule doesn't meet the criteria of being equal in terms of strength of schedule, because the way the criteria is set up, it's impossible for teams like Coastal Carolina and BYU and Cincinnati to equal those criteria in terms of strength of schedule. The number one thing they look at, it's impossible, because they play a conference that's not going to happen, and especially this year because they took away their ability to play a power conference team and get a big win. That was taken away by these power conferences because most of them are not playing non-conference games.
You got to remember the standards change a little bit every year because the committee changes every year too. So what each committee looks for is a little bit different year by year by year because there are different people and they're making the decisions. So it's not like they come into a year and they say, here's our worksheet, here's what we have to live by, and we're going to live by these to a T. Every year is a little bit different because there's different people in there.
Well, that debate that year with Ohio State and Alabama, That was also the same year that UCF went undefeated, and I think they went in a bowl game because they got the New Year. They were the team that got to play, and they annihilated Auburn, I think, in the bowl game.
Yeah, and Auburn didn't want to play.
It was close.
Yeah, but the point being is that,
7-point
but I don't think you'll ever see with the 14 play. You'll never see a group of 5 team in the Final Four. It's not going to happen, and that's why they're not going to expand the playoffs. My thing is this. You have every level in basketball. You have Division II, you have Division I AA. They have championships for everything. Why don't they have a separate conference, a separate playoff for the group of 5? Because they're spinning their wheels. They're never going to get in the big time, boys. But I would love to see the group of 5, which is 65 teams, by the way, the MAC, Sun Belt, all those. They should have their own playoff system. I don't know why they don't, because otherwise they go to a bowl game and that's it. I don't know why they set up a separate playoff system for the group of 5. There's 65 teams, and that would, to me, would be, they do it with Division II, and every division has a playoff system. Why they don't break off and do that, I think eventually they will, but I don't understand why they don't do that right now, because a team, I tell you what, the team that's not even mentioned this might be the best group of 5 team in the country is Buffalo. If you look at what Buffalo's done this year, they only played 5 games. They completely annihilated every team they've played. And they may have the best-kept secret in that running back up there, but they haven't even mentioned in these rankings. I don't get it, because I think Buffalo could play with any group of 5 team in the country this year. They are terribly talented, and actually that program's been pretty good lately. And if you look at their scores, my gosh, I'm surprised they're not even ranked in this. But that would be a situation where these group of 5 could have their own 18 playoff, and they could have the 5 conference champions and 3 at-large, and they could run this playoffs the same time, like what the formerly Division I AA does. I wish they would do that, because I think it would be much better for a guy that follows the MAC. At least we got a shot to win something, because there's no way that any MAC team's ever going to be in the Final Four.
Well,
Forget about it.
Here's what's going to happen, and I'll do my hot take. Within 5 years, I'm going to say that this is going to happen within 5 years. The Power 5 will have their own thing for football only. The Power 5 will be a separate entity from everyone, and they'll have their own stuff, and they'll have an 18 playoff within the Power 5 or a 16 playoff. And then the rest of Division I, including 1AA, they will be included in this. Everyone else will have their own 16 to 24 team playoff, and they'll have an elaborate playoff system where the Power 5, consisting of how many teams right now? 14 in the SEC, 14 in the Big Ten, 10 in the Big 12, 14 in the Pac-12. Notre Dame and 14 in the ACC. So 14 times 3 is 42, 64 or 54, 64. The 65 teams encompassing the Power 5 are going to be on their own, and the rest of the Division I, the mid-majors and 1AA, FBS, or FCS, will all be under one umbrella within 5 years, and they'll all be playing their own version of a championship, mid-major championship, call it, and they will include the bowl games. They'll cut up the bowl games that we'll have for the FCS and the mid-majors to play in their playoff and get a national champion, and the big bowl games will be part of the playoffs for the Power 5 conferences. I say that happens within the next 5 years. 10
Yeah,
tops.
I think you're right. They're discussing that too, and I think that if you read a lot of the articles about the separation, one of the reasons why the Power 5 schools want this to happen is because there's a lot of things that they pay for with the university involving football. That's a lot of the travel, the uniforms, the insurance, and their point is this: listen, separate right now, and you guys keep that revenue and pay for a lot of the things we don't have to pay for anymore with the football programs, because you got enough revenue to cover that, like the coaches' salaries and things like that, which the universities have to negotiate. Then let us take that money that we're not using to subsidize the football program, and we'll use that to pay for the other sports. That's pretty much where they're coming from right there, because they don't control the revenue, but there's a lot of things they have to pay up front for the football program, and they would like to say separate the revenue. And when you want to negotiate with a coach, you negotiate with the instead of the university, who really doesn't have any control. All this money comes in, as you know, coaches get raises all the time because of the amount of revenue that's coming in, and that should be a separate entity. And that's what they want to do. They want to separate that revenue coming in for these power conferences on football only, and let them pay for everything, and then the universities don't have to pay for some of the insurance, the uniforms, the stadium, things like that. So that should come through the revenue. I agree with that, and I believe that's going to happen. You're exactly right, and I think it might happen sooner than later.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. Like, there are a lot of logistics that go into that make that conversation a lot more complicated than it appears to be. But on paper, it seems like a pretty solid idea, and as long as you have, I don't know, regular season you still have those teams play each other. You can still have a MAC team go play a Big Ten team. It wouldn't really change any of that, because there are a lot of teams that need that one game to bring in money, because they get paid a lot of money to go and play your Michigans, your Ohio States, or whatever. So I guess that wouldn't, as long as that wouldn't separate those games and that revenue stream, then everyone would be okay with it.
Yeah, because it's funny, because a lot of these smaller schools like Ohio U and places like, they're actually, because of the situation with the COVID and how they're going to lose some money there, they're actually doing things like, instead of taking a plane ride, they're taking a bus. I mean, they're not buying new uniforms until 2 years from now. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on with these smaller schools that the big schools never worry about because of all this revenue that comes in. But like I said, when a small school like Ohio U or Kent goes to a bowl game, they lose money. Because the tickets, they can't. If you ever watch those bowl games, seems like there's 800 people at those games, and they're all boosters and family and friends. It's a party, like the Bahama Bowl, and they can't sell the tickets, so they have to eat those tickets, and that's why a lot of times the conferences have to give them money up front. But it's good advertising for the universities. But their most important thing is not besides getting the big time payouts when they play at a school, is the enrollment. That's where the most of the money comes in, through tuition. That's where they make a lot of their money, these universities, and they're more concerned about that than they are going to a big-time major bowl game, because that'll never happen.
Champ, always a pleasure, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Go Irish.
There you go. All right.
I was glad, because for a minute there I thought that was going to turn into a boo-hoo session for Notre Dame, and I was going to stop it.
No, I mean...
It was getting there. I was like, Notre Dame bias. Notre Dame got absolutely the door open for them by the ACC this year.
Because the
Here's
ACC...
the championship.
Well, because the ACC knows
so
that
I don't want any...
Listen, the ACC knew bringing Notre Dame in is going to make the ACC a better conference.
Oh, man, that's funny. I just know that Georgia Tech women kind of redeemed the football team and beat the pants off of Notre Dame this weekend. So,
what, in basketball?
Yeah.
There you go.
Got that.
Listen, Muffin's gone, so it's a new era.
You still got
Notre Dame.
You still got all the recruits. Don't be saying Muffin's gone, so everything changes.
It's a different era.
Got one of her assistants in there.
I get it.
And you got all of her recruits.
I get it. It's just we don't have her. That's the issue. Let's go to Emmanuel real quick. Emmanuel, you're on the MP Vivo Heating and Air Conditioning Hotline. What's going on?
Well, how you doing, my brother?
I'm good.
Well, what you guys just described was the NIT. But I want to talk
the
about
consolation tournament.
Yeah. I wasn't going to call, but I have to call and say this because I've been talking to some
You should call every day, Emmanuel. We like hearing from you.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, I've been talking to some Brown fans.
Uh-oh.
And I saw something Monday night that really made me feel sorry for the Browns. For the simple reason is, they talked about, the announcers talked about, well, now they have name players, like Chubb, Hunt, Baker, Odell, Jarvis, Ward, and Miles, and so they got the names, and I would find it awful hard. I personally don't think that the Cleveland Browns can play a better game than what they played Monday night.
Offensively, no, but defensively, yeah, they can.
Defensively, they're horrible. I mean, and now, in fairness, the entire secondary was out. Now, even if the entire secondary plays, that back seven is still very much need to be improved. But
I'm going to tell you something.
Remember, the Ravens' best linebacker was taken off the game like an hour before game time, he was put on the COVID
Well,
list.
and also Baker Mayfield went off when 2 of the defensive backs went down with injuries.
So,
I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm just saying Marcus Peters.
I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah, Marcus Peters went down with an injury before Baker went off. I'm just going to say that.
I'm going to tell you something. When Lamar is playing that MVP like he did Monday night, they'll beat anybody. There's no defense. This guy was reigning the MVP, right?
I'll give Lamar credit because there were times when things weren't working for him in that game and they were down or whatever, and he didn't throw a tantrum. He didn't lose his cool, and he really led his team well, which is something we haven't seen from Lamar in a big game up until that Monday Night Football game, because their playoff lives were literally on the line of that. If they don't win Monday night, they're probably out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and before I don't even want to hear any more talk about him going to take a deuce, because that did not happen. You can plainly see there was a bandage on his throwing arm when he left the locker room and went on to the field. He had IVs.
Fake bandage.
Ain't no fake bandage. He had an IV. I mean, there's no two ways about that. He had an IV. He didn't take no deuce.
He had to take an IV after he took a deuce because it was so
yeah, but what I'm saying is this. With the Cleveland Browns playing like they did, right, it still wasn't good enough to beat Baltimore. So no matter how, I don't see Cleveland putting a total game together again the rest of this year like they played last night. And think about it, that wasn't good enough to win. What do you do as the Cleveland Browns going forward?
Well, they're not going to be playing a team anywhere close to the Baltimore Ravens the next 2 weeks. I mean, they're playing the Giants, they're playing the Jets. Now, as I said yesterday, if you want to avoid the same old Browns moniker, then the Browns are going to have to go out and they're going to have to win on Sunday night, because in previous years, one of the big things with the Browns, when you lose a game like the game on Monday night, it led to this team has gone sideways and one loss is going to turn into multiple losses in a row. To avoid that final hurdle of same old Browns argument, this is the final hurdle that this Cleveland Browns team has to overcome, and that is, can they beat the New York Giants and not let Monday night's game turn them into the same old Browns?
What I'm saying is this. The way the Cleveland Browns played Monday night, there's a lot of teams that wouldn't have beat them. So what I'm saying is I was impressed. It was a good game. I was impressed with the Cleveland Browns. But I also realized it's still not good enough to beat the Baltimores. It's still not good enough to beat the Pittsburghs. It's still not good enough to beat the teams that are in the playoffs, the Kansas Cities. So are you going to be satisfied with just being a good team or something? They're going to have to either find another defensive lineman or defensive. They have to. They're not ready yet for prime time.
Oh, no, this isn't a finished product. Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, this team, if they beat the Giants, they'll be a playoff team and they'll get eliminated the first game in the playoffs because their defense will be exposed. I don't care who they play. Their defense will be exposed and they'll get knocked out in the first round because their defense, other than the front four, their back seven is horrendous. And they will be exposed. There's no two ways about this. But I would tell Browns fans this is not a finished product. They spend an entire offseason working on this defense because the offense, it's arrived. Whether people want to admit this or not, that offense has officially arrived. That offense is ready for prime time. It's ready to go. Now you got to rely and hope that the defense, specifically the back seven, gets up to speed, because if they do, this is the best team in the AFC North. With a solid defense, this is hands down, send home the jury, the best team in the AFC North.
Well, that's like saying with Patrick Mahomes, the Ravens are the best team in the
I mean, all they got to do is come up with a solid secondary, and Ward is a good start. If they get a solid defense, they are the best team in the AFC North.
I don't see it. And if and buts and candy and nuts and all the other good stuff y'all like to say, it ain't going to happen. But it's just that I think I've seen the Cleveland Browns ceiling this year, Monday night. That's all I'm saying, guys.
All right.
Great show as always.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
man.
All right, see you. And I just will preface all of this by saying next year you'll be seeing a 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. Next year you'll be seeing Baltimore will be a bigger threat than Pittsburgh, based upon the fact Roethlisberger will be a year older, and father time always wins. So Baltimore is going to be, at least in theory, unless Roethlisberger continues to play ridiculously talented football, Baltimore will be a little bit based on father time. But if Cleveland,
it's going to be really hard for Pittsburgh to go from 11-2 to not a threat.
Well, no, I'm not going to say they're not going to be a threat, but I'm going to say if Cleveland gets a solid defense, their offense has arrived.
Cleveland's calling. Can we move to the NFC East, please?
Well, yeah. No. Let me put it to you this way: if Cleveland had Miami's defense, they're the team to beat, other than Kansas City in the AFC this year.
If they had Patrick Mahomes, they'd be the best.
Well,
team.
I mean, their offense has already arrived.
I know. I'm just like, it's if this, if that.
Yeah.
They don't, and they have
but
to
they
do
don't,
it.
and they have to work on
and
that.
they should, because they have personnel that has the ability to be a quality defense. Not the best defense in the league.
Yeah.
But they have talent enough to be an adequate defense if they're putting up 42 points and their offense is where it should be. They have enough to really be better than what they are.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I mean, if they can get a solid defense.
Because they've played good defense at points in this season. They've shown that they have the ability
they've also
to play
played it
good
against
defense.
some pretty bad offensive
I know,
teams.
but I know it was bad weather. But I think their Raiders game was a really good defensive game from Cleveland.
Well, except for the fact they couldn't stop the Raiders' running attack.
Well, they couldn't, but they still held them the points.
Yeah.
I look at points. Like,
yeah.
Chiefs give up a lot of yards, and everyone kind of craps on their defense. But they are 6th in the league in scoring defense, which means they are not giving up points. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
You give up 21 a game, you're 6th in the league, you can give up as many yards as you want.
Yeah, you can go 20-20, and as long as you're giving up very few points in the red zone or very few touchdowns, that's all there is to it. So there it is. As far as, I don't even where my Bills are with that. I don't think they've.
Pittsburgh's won, by the way.
They, I know my Bills had a bad run where they were just not very good. Giving up points. They've given up 321, so they've given up 40 more points than Kansas City. So that's 3 more points a game that they're giving up than Kansas City. So yeah, that would be a and one of the reasons why the Chiefs are the prohibitive favorites in the AFC is because of the fact. Okay, they're scoring 403 points in 13 games. That's over 30 points a game. And they're giving up a little over 20 points again.
Right.
So.
And, you take the dang Raiders' offense is the one offense we just haven't been able – take away those 2 games, then that number goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
The Raiders' offense was, unstoppable against us. So.
Yeah, I mean, it is, look at all the games that you guys have played. Okay, you gave up 27 to the Dolphins. And a lot of that was in garbage time. 24 to the Buccaneers, 31 to the Raiders, 31 to the Panthers.
That one irks me.
40 to the Raiders.
Right.
And other than that, 20 or less. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's solid football.
Exactly.
And especially into the postseason.
The Panthers was the first game that McCaffrey came back.
Yeah.
So they were feeding him like crazy, and he's hard to stop.
Yeah. Now here's an interesting thing. Come postseason. And I've kept up the record through the years. Ever since the NFL was created, and I know this goes way, 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 way back in the championship games, and then now all the playoff games. In the history of playoff games,
since the dawn of time,
the losing team in the playoff games have scored 20 points or fewer 83% of the time, which tells me you better bring it defensively if you want to win in the National Football League in the postseason. And that's where Kansas City is going to become the favorite.
The Chiefs won the playoffs last year with defense. I mean, I know Mahomes made a lot of great plays, and their offense woke up, but their defense played very good in all of their games. So
And that's where your defense wins championships moniker. Offense puts butts in the seats. Defense wins championships, and that's true in every.
Unless you're in Lisbon,
sport.
Then the offense is just lighting up people like it's.
Well,
it's
I mean,
Christmas tree.
Brownfield, McCullough, and Sifke. It sounds like a damn law firm.
I'm looking at Quinn because man, that offense right now.
Yeah.
It's Christmas season. They're lighting people up.
Yeah. The law offices of Brownfield, McCullough, and Sifke would like your 3.
You fought the law. The law wins all the time.
Yeah, the law wins all the time in Lisbon. The law offices of McCullough, Sifke, and Brownfield. That sounds good. There's your commercial. All right, we're out of here. Power Hour